Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Friday. Hope everybody's ready for the weekend. Hope everybody's ready for the blue gold game. Kicks off tomorrow at 2 p.m. inside of Notre Dame Stadium. And today, Brian, we have a Friday Free-For-All Mailbag to close out the weekend. But before we dive into the mailbag questions overall as a whole, you guys have already submitted some awesome questions. We're going to kind of give a recap of the first round of the 2026 NFL Draft. Obviously, that wrapped up last night around 11:30, and we stayed up just long enough to watch two Notre Dame running backs go in the first round. And, man, can't tell you how excited we were. You and I were both texting. You know me, Brian. I never really stay up that late anyways, but that was definitely worth it. And it was
way past Trevor's bedtime last night. Way past Trevor's bedtime. But as he said, it was definitely worth it, man. My wife had just kind of gone to bed. I was like, look, honey, it's 10 something o'clock. He's not going to get picked for a while. You can go to bed, And she's like, do you think he's going to go in the first round? I was like, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I didn't want to tell her, like, I'm really hoping so because, I didn't want her to stay up. She's like you, Trev. She's up at 11, 12 o'clock at night. She's going to pretty much be a zombie the next morning. So, so I yelled. I was like, let's go. And she's like, are you okay? She had just fallen asleep and I yelled. And unfortunately, I wasn't in the basement this time. I was in the living room. So I woke her up. But it was an awesome night last night, Trev. It really was. It was really cool. And obviously, we're referring to NFL draft last night. We're going to have a mailbag today, but Trev and I are going to kick things off. We're going to talk a little draft. We have some draft questions that we're going to make, but we figured, hey, let's kind of kick things off talking about the draft. And Jeremiah Love went number 3 overall to the Arizona Cardinals. We said, Trev, yesterday in our preview that there was a window between 3 and 7 that he had been predicted. The rumblings were that if the Cardinals couldn't trade out, they would take him. But then I had read a couple other things that had led me to believe that if David Bailey was available, they were going to take David Bailey. And so I had kind of been told by a couple people before the draft that the rumors were that the Jets were going to take Arvell Reese. And so then I'm thinking, okay, well, sounds like Jeremiah might fall. So when I saw that the Jets took David Bailey, I was like, okay, this might happen now. And then, of course, they took him. And so I was very excited. Very excited about that. And then that was at the very beginning of the draft, Trev. And at the very end of round 1, the news came down that the Seattle Seahawks had stayed patient, let the draft come to them, and took their man, landing Jadarian Price with the number 32 overall pick. So some history was made last night, Trevor. First thing is, this is just, I believe, the 5th time that a pair of running backs have been drafted in the first round in the same draft ever. This is the common draft, so kind of 40s, 50s on. It is also the very first time in NFL history of, like I said, the common draft, where 2 backs from the same school were the first 2 backs taken in the NFL draft. Every other time there's been somebody in between. There was somebody in between Darren McFadden and Felix Jones, and there was somebody in between Ronnie Brown and Cadillac Williams. So this is the first time in NFL history that 2 backs have been taken, Trev. Let's first kind of just talk a little bit about Jeremiah Love going number 3 to the Arizona Cardinals. Highest that a Notre Dame running back has been drafted since 1957 with Paul Hornung. That's quite the accomplishment.
Yeah, that's not too shabby. I mean, and it's fitting. What other player to do something that hasn't been done at Notre Dame in a very long time, or arguably ever? When you start talking about some of the other records that they broke, it's their first Doak Walker Award winner ever in program history, and that's definitely not due to a shortage of really good running backs in South Bend. But man, I love the fit. We talked about how we knew he was going to go somewhere in the top 7. Odds are, he's not going to slip out of the top 10. Definitely didn't think that, but I love the fit with the Arizona Cardinals. They're sticking with Jacoby Brissett this year at quarterback, but I think what they're trying to do is really, really load up and build some weapons around a quarterback that they might potentially take in the 2027 draft. I mean, they got Jeremiah Love. They have Marvin Harrison. Trey McBride is coming off of one of the best seasons that a tight end has had in the NFL in quite some time. So they're following a recipe for success that I align myself with. I know there's 2 trains of thought. You either draft a quarterback young and build around him over the next couple of years, or it's kind of like you make the house move in ready for that franchise quarterback, and then you bring him in. I prefer the latter, and I think this move, drafting Jeremiah Love, all but solidifies it. I love it.
I think there's a couple teams that did that, but I think the Cardinals are clearly doing that. And, the fact that they didn't, there's talk that they might trade up into round one to get Ty Simpson. I think the St. Louis or the Los Angeles Rams did the whole division a favor. Did you see the video of Brock Heward this morning? He covers the Seahawks, and he's a Washington guy, played at Washington, does a show talking about the Seahawks, and he's like just going crazy, like, yes, 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 when Ty Simpson got picked. He's a Seahawks guy. He's ecstatic that they took him over other people. But, I agree. I think they're doing that, Trev. I also think that that's what the Jets are doing. Build a town around, and then we'll put the quarterback in, which, A, you can get a quarterback next year, or B, you're more attractive to a free agent quarterback if the need is there, and you have a bunch of guys on rookie contracts. So big for Jeremiah Love. No, it's not great for Jeremiah Love as a rookie to be part of the Cardinals. They're going to have to rebuild the offensive line. But the thing that makes him different than like Ashton Genty for the Raiders last year, Trev, who obviously, had some struggles last season running behind a pretty bad offensive line last season, and still almost rushed for 1,000 yards, but was only like 3.7 yards per carry and, only 5 touchdowns. He did catch 55 passes. But the thing that hurt him is he is primarily just like a runner and in a downhill running back. Number one, Jeremiah Love's a guy that you can kind of get outside and do some different things with. And then also he can, I think, impact the pass game a whole lot more. Ashton Genty caught 55 passes last year, but it was for only 346 yards. So, 6.3 yards per catch. So it's check downs and stuff like that. So I think that he'll be fine, but you're getting, like you said, getting skill players in place, then you can build the lines that way and have an impact. And then of course at 32, it's now we should call it Notre Dame West. It's just what we should call the NFC West now, Trev, because three of the four starting running backs in the NFC West will most likely next year be Notre Dame guys, with Kyron Williams and being joined by Jeremiah Love. And then with the number 32 overall pick, the Seattle Seahawks took Jadarian Price, which I think is an absolute great pick. This is a team, he's walking into maybe the best situation of any player drafted. Like seriously, because you're walking into a situation where they've got an established offensive line. They've got a veteran quarterback. They've got a great defense. They're defending Super Bowl champs. Their running back that was the starter, won Super Bowl MVP, just left in the offseason via free agency. And they're just like, all right, you step right into that situation and help us out. And I think that's absolutely huge for Jadarian Price and a much better situation for him to step into even than what Jeremiah is stepping into. Now, he won't be making the money that Jeremiah is making, but he's still doing okay. So it was a great night, Trev, for the Notre Dame running backs. And just now they're going to – and here's the crazy thing. They've been great teammates, the fact that Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price have the relationship that they have, the fact that Jadarian Price chose not to go into the portal and get a big payday and play, run the ball more. He trusted the staff, trusted the process, trusted the program, got his degree, wanted to be a part of something special. And he gets rewarded by being the number 2 draft pick in the class. Because here's the deal. If Jadarian Price would have gone to any other school and rushed for 1,300 yards this year, guess what? He's still the number 2 pick in this draft at running back. You know what I mean? And so it really worked out pretty amazing for him. And, he's still going to get paid, because I'm looking at this from Spotrac, Trev. The number 3 overall pick, the total value is $53 million. The number 32 overall pick is $16.7 million. So you're talking about these two kids are going to make $70+ million next season. And the nice thing for Jadarian too is, I believe, first round picks are the only ones that are fully guaranteed, basically. I believe is the case for in the NFL. So super happy for both of those kids, Trev. Just share some of our overall thoughts on that, on the 2 picks, Trev. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I think it's great. It's cool that they're going to be able to face off against each other twice a year. Add Kyron Williams in the mix out there in West Bend, basically just picked up the Notre Dame running back room and kicked it out west. But I like it. I think it's going to be a really fun fit for them. And with Jadarian, he's walking into an established organization. It fills the need. So I thought that was a great draft pick for Seattle. I was talking to a buddy on the phone last night during the draft, and it's like who else would they take there at that position? Because Jadarian's not going to be there and pick number 64. So it's, yeah, you could go and get a guy like a Nicholas Singleton or a Katron Allen or the Emmett Johnson kid from Nebraska, but I don't think they have as high of a ceiling of what Price does in the league. So fills the need. You got Zach Charbonnet coming off of an ACL tear, so it's questionable if he's even going to be healthy to go for week 1. So Price steps into a situation very similar to Jeremiah Love, where he's the clear-cut number 1 guy, but Price won't have to carry the load necessarily that Jeremiah Love might have to. I know they still have Trey Sermon. They have a couple of other backs, but Love is going to be the class of that running back room, and I think the same thing with Jadarian Price.
Well, and the thing too, if you're the Seahawks, Trev, is you got a guy that knows how to be successful in a rotation.
Mm-hmm.
And him and Zach Charbonnet are very different backs in size, style of play, and so that's going to fit, in my opinion, very, very well. So Notre Dame made some history last night. I mean, what about, think about what this message sends to recruits if you're Notre Dame. Think about that, Trev. Here's Mike Denbrock and Jaywan Sider's new recruiting pitch to a running back. Buddy, you could come here, never start a single game in your entire career, be successful, produce, rush for over 1,600 career yards, and still be a first-round draft pick. You're worried about Notre Dame losing, one of the 2 commitments at running back because they're both in a class? Why? They can both become a first-round NFL draft picks. You know what I mean? So that just made Jaywan Sider's job and Mike Denbrock's job a whole lot easier when you talk about how this impacts Notre Dame on the recruiting trail.
And to be the favorite to be the 32nd overall pick. Like, that's what his odds were on FanDuel before the draft started. And when you go and you look at what happened, it's not like Seattle shocked everybody and ended up taking Jadarian Price, so he snuck into the first round. It was like, who else are you taking?
A lot of people had this for the last month, Trev. A lot of the mock drafts you've put up, I think Mel Kiper, his I think had this. Sure did. Didn't Mel have? No, he did. Did he have Notre Dame? Did he have Love to the Cardinals?
No, he didn't have Love to the Cardinals. He had Love to the Titans and Price to the Seahawks.
I saw a mock draft, and I can't remember who it was. I did see a mock draft in the last week that had this exact scenario play itself out, where you had Love going number 3 to the Cardinals, and then you had Price to the Seahawks at 32. So yeah, they like you said, they stayed put. Both teams stayed put, got their guy. And you know what I think this also is huge for Notre Dame? I think this is huge for Notre Dame, Trev, because this is a great message that you can now share with the players that are thinking about, like, Coach, I want the ball more. I want this more. Hey, man, listen, stay here. Be a part of what this amazing thing we're building. You're going to get your NIL money. You're going to get a Notre Dame degree. And guess what? You can still go be a first-round NFL draft pick. That's such a great thing, and it's needed in this era of guys just kind of leaving to, for always that next best thing, or that I got to look out for me, which at times is okay. There's nothing wrong with that, Trev. Sometimes it's like, look, there's a better situation out there for me. But if it's just about playing time, see it through, buddy. See it through.
It's an example solidified on paper what Marcus Freeman preaches all the time about delayed gratification. We're talking about a kid that came in and was supposed to start as a true freshman over Audric Estime and Logan Diggs, but he got hurt. And then he comes back from injury in 2023. People are already talking about Jeremiah Love. Audric Estime has 18 rushing touchdowns. And then it's like, okay, what happens in 24? Well, you got a mobile quarterback. Then you have Jeremiah Love's breakout season, and then Jadarian still sticks around. And he had the opportunity in 2025 to go somewhere and be the guy, and he would have been the guy at almost every other school in the country not named Penn State. You know what I'm saying? So,
the way the injuries impacted that roster, but
honestly,
maybe Missouri and Ole Miss, maybe.
Yeah. He could have gone and been a dude at any one of those schools. Out of the 136 at the time FBS teams, he could have been the dude at 130 of them. And he elected to stay in South Bend and then reap the benefits, and was now a first-round pick. So I think it's fantastic. Happy for both of them.
Yep. Yeah, and I just like to see good people get rewarded, and both of those kids are really good kids. And I wouldn't say that if they weren't. I just wouldn't bring it up. You know what I mean? Like, there's players over the years that I just don't bring up the kind of person they are. They just talk stick to football. But these are two good kids, come from great families. So excited for them. And again, it's great for Notre Dame. And it's absolutely great for Notre Dame, the current team, and then also from a recruiting standpoint. Trev, before we move on, Trev, to just sort of the bigger mailbag, we are going to just talk a little bit about the draft, and then we'll answer some draft questions early on. But a couple things that we wanted to do, obviously, when you look at just the draft and kind of some things we talked about, they made history. Notre Dame last night, excitement of picks. One observation is apparently the NFC West only likes running backs from smart schools, because you now have 3 Notre Dame running backs and a Stanford running back that'll be the 4 best backs in the league in the NFC West last year. But Trav, let's just briefly talk about some things that we saw on day one that we really liked. Obviously it was I would say that our prediction yesterday was, not prediction, because we didn't predict it. We said it'll be one of two things. It'll either be just kind of chalk or it'll be a really wild day. And it ended up being a really wild draft, just with reaches and teams that just like, okay, that's an interesting pick. And then a lot of trades in yesterday's draft as well, Trev. So we're just going to say a couple teams that we think had the best days, and then a couple teams that we thought had questionable days. And so obviously the Seahawks and Cardinals won in round one. Obviously we think that, but few other teams that had good days, Trev. I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth, and it just seems kind of weird to say it. I thought the Jets had a great first day of the draft.
Oh, I did too. And to your point, it's weird to say that because that's a team that habitually you look at their draft picks and it's like, what are we doing here, guys? But no, they're following the model that I like. They're following the model that the Cardinals did, and they're beefing up their roster that's going to surround a quarterback that's likely going to come in the 2027 draft class. They went out and they got Geno Smith from the Raiders, and so they have a veteran quarterback in there. They didn't reach and take a quarterback that they shouldn't have in this draft. Maybe they do in rounds 4 or 5. They definitely didn't do it with the 13th overall pick, but we'll get to that here in a second. But I like what the Jets are doing, man. They traded back into the first round to go get Omar Cooper Jr., which I thought was fantastic. And then they also got Kenyon Sadiq. So when you're looking at what this future quarterback is going to be stepping into, whoever they get in the 2027 draft class, you'll get a veteran Breece Hall. You'll get Garrett Wilson and Omar Cooper Jr. You're going to get a second-year Kenyon Sadiq. And you're also going to get Mason Taylor, who is more of that traditional blocking attached tight end. So it's going to be an interesting offense, and I think they're going to need it. Now, what they're going to be able to do with it is going to be up in the air, because I think Frank Reich is their offensive coordinator. Aaron Glenn's a defensive-minded head coach. But from what they did in this draft, really like what they did. The Jets are definitely one of the, I guess you could call it the proverbial winners of day one. They're definitely in that conversation.
Yeah, and they've built up their offensive line in recent years. Got Ola Fuller-Runshu not Fuller-Runshu. I'm sitting there thinking of Fashanu from Penn State. I'm sitting there thinking of David Fuller-Runshu from Notre Dame. And then last year they got the kid from Missouri in the top 10. So you're building up your offensive line. You've got Garrett Wilson. And as you've pointed out a lot of times, Trev, not a lot of weapons after that. Well, they just added 2 really good weapons. They added arguably the best pure pass rusher in the draft. And then, as you mentioned, we had some questions about teams taking Omar Cooper like in the top 20, because we're like, he's not a number 1 in our opinion. Well, he's not even the number 1 pass catcher they drafted in the first round, and he's going into a team that's got Garrett Wilson. And so you look at him, that's a good pick. They didn't give up a ton to move up and get him. Really like what the Jets did. And I think they're the other team that you and I were talking about earlier, that the Jets are, in my opinion, are building for next year's quarterback class. Because we were like, why was the GM and the head coach and the special assistant to the GM all at Notre Dame's pro day? They're not taking Jeremiah Love. They're not taking Jadarian Price. Because you can say, well, what if they're here for Jadarian Price? They have Breece Hall. Didn't they just sign him to an extension this past offseason?
I believe so.
So they got Breece Hall. What I think the Jets are doing, and I think this is very smart, I think it's the same thing the Cardinals are doing. Next year's quarterback draft class, the next couple years quarterback draft classes look to be much stronger than they are now. They wanted to get their eyes on guys like CJ Carr and some of these other 2027 quarterback draft players. So, hey, look, let's build around those guys so that way that guy's walking into a good situation. And if I'm right and Trev's right about them doing that with Cardinals and Jets, I think that's smart, because don't do what the Steelers did, where you cross their fingers and hope upon a star that Kenny Pickett can play in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, just bide your time. If you can get like a third or fourth round, take a flyer on Drew Aller. Take a flyer on a Taylor Green or something like that, because then you don't, if you take a guy like that third, fourth, fifth round, that doesn't preclude you from taking a quarterback next year. But if you trade up in the early round 2 and take Carson Beck, hoping that he's the guy, then you're not going to, most likely take a quarterback next year. And if you do, then you wasted a premium pick this year. So I think that's what the Jets are doing. And I thought they had a great first day. I thought the Giants had a solid first day as well. They just kind of stayed put and took the best available player. I think there's some questions, Trevor, I know that you have about, like, they got a lot of similar types of players now on defense, but I think that they did take the best available player at that number 5 pick. And then, of course, your next pick, you get, in my opinion, without a doubt, the best run blocking lineman in the draft. And from what we read, they're going to move him to guard. And so now you're shoring up that offensive line for your franchise quarterback that you took last year.
Yeah, I on paper, I like the picks of what the Giants snagged. It's best overall guy. The only question that I have, and I have zero questions about them getting Francis Mauigoa, it's what you're going to do with Arvell Reese in terms of where you're going to play him. Because in their post-draft press conference, John Harbaugh looked at the GM in the face and said, "Yeah, we're keeping Kayvon Thibodeau, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." And John Harbaugh was like, "Yeah, we like to keep the best players here." It's like, okay, so now you're telling me an edge rotation, you're going to have Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, and now Arvell Reese. Or are you going to play him as an off-ball linebacker at the next level? Like, what are you going to do with him? Or are you going to kind of wait for him to grow and mature and learn under some of those guys and then try to shop Kayvon Thibodeau next year? Could it be one of those things? So I thought that was interesting. But as the picks themselves, I really liked. So now it's just, what's the aftermath of the first round for the New York Giants? It's, do they hold on to Kayvon Thibodeau? Brian Burns is getting up there in age. Do you try to shop him? So I'm interested to see what they do there. But as far as the picks go, I liked them.
Yep. I thought, it's crazy, Trev. I thought the Cleveland Browns had a really savvy first round. I saw a lot of mock drafts that had the Browns taking an offensive lineman at 6. And when their draft slot came up, every single offensive lineman that they could have taken was right there. They could have taken their guy. And instead, they traded down 3 spots, got a third and a fifth, correct? I believe they got a third and a fifth out of it, and took the guy that most people that I saw had projected them to take anyway at 6 in getting Spencer Fano from Utah. And then, of course, at 24, I think they traded I can't remember how they got that pick, but they take Casey Concepcion with the second round pick. So now you're looking at the Browns and you're thinking, like, okay, they had a nice day, and then they're going to pick here again soon at number 39. So I really liked what the Browns did. You got a premium. I think anything in day 1, day two are premium picks, in my opinion. And you picked up a third round pick, got the guy you wanted anyway, and then got a good slot receiver type of guy at 24. I thought the Browns had a good day. Yeah, they should have addressed this need. Guys, the Browns have a lot more needs than you're going to be able to address with 2 picks. You know what I'm saying? So I think they had a very savvy pick, which then leads to why it's smart to pick up 2 more draft picks in this draft class, because it gives you capital to move around, or extra picks to get, guys can play for you.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. When you have as many needs as the Browns have, you could go and try to make this the flashy splash in the first round and try to bring in a big name to make the fans feel at ease. But let's be real about something. The Browns have been trying to do that for the last 20 years, and it hasn't really worked out for them. So start to fill the needs. I like it. Continue to build capital in the back of the draft. I mean, that's what the Bills did. The Bills at the tail end of the draft traded 3 times to just get out of the first round and get picks in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round. So I like it, man. I like it.
Yeah. I thought the Commanders being able to stand pat and get the guy that you heard for an hour, it seemed like we heard that kept talking about how Dan Quinn was just praying that, Sonny Styles would fall to them. That's the guy he wanted, and they got him at 7. So you got a top 3 to 4 talent in the draft at 7, and you just got to stand pat. So I thought they did well. There's other teams that, had good players. Those are teams that I thought we had the best days on top of the Cardinals and Seahawks. But a couple teams had days that I thought were a little questionable, Trevor. And the biggest one is the Rams taking, this is like what, just the second time they've drafted in the first round in the last decade. And they took Ty Simpson at number 13. The post round press conference was pretty interesting. You know, Sean McVay said all the right things, but he had a couple little comments that you're like, no, I mean, look, let's be real. This is Matt's team. He's coming in to compete for the backup quarterback job. Like, you drafted a backup quarterback, and you know, somebody in the chat said, "Oh, this is smart. You know, you're drafting a guy to sit and learn." I'm not opposed to that. Like, I'm not opposed to the Rams at 13, a team that doesn't have a lot of holes, drafting their quarterback of the future to learn behind Matt Stafford. I wish more teams would do that. I have no problem with them taking a quarterback. I have a problem with it taking Ty Simpson at 13. That's what I have a problem with. I thought the Rams had a very odd day, and especially when you look at who was still on the board there at 13.
Yeah, I get it. I know that some Rams fans are kind of going through the cope of what Bears fans went through during like the 2018 draft or whenever, or the 2017 draft when they took Mitch Trubisky over Deshaun Watson. It's a lot of that stuff. So, you know, give him a little bit to learn and come in and groom. And it's like, yeah, I understand that. But we're talking about a guy that we don't believe just has the chops to be in the NFL, whether he learns under Matt Stafford or Aaron Rodgers, or if Peyton Manning came back, learn under Peyton Manning. We're talking about a quarterback that I think that has that level of a ceiling. But I think the thing where Sean McVay is most frustrated is Matt Stafford at the ESPYs talked about how, or the end of the year, like NFL banquet or whatever they had with all the awards, talked about how he's coming back for one more year, and they wanted to add pieces to make a run at the Super Bowl. And that's why they were being projected to get Mekhi Lemon so much. I know they still have Puka and Devontae Adams, but Devontae Adams missed quite a bit last year with a hamstring injury, and they were looking to add and really set them over the top, make one final push, and going and getting a backup quarterback with the 13th overall pick, who might not even be your future, considering Sean McVay is like, I mean, he's coming into battle with Stetson Bennett. So I think that was a crazy pick.
That was a really interesting comment for sure. It's funny, Trev. We had a comment from Gabe Weiss. He said, it's never a good thing when you're agreeing with the Browns and Jets draft selections. And I'm like, dude, I get it. That's why I was like, I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth, but I couldn't help it. I thought another team that had a strange day was the Dolphins. I did not like their draft. You know my stance on Caden Proctor. I think he's going to be way too slow-footed to play tackle in the NFL. I'm not super high on Caden Proctor. You took him at 12, and then taking Chris Johnson at corner in the second, late in the first round. They're nice players. It's just you had some opportunities to really, you know, impact your team, and I just don't know that they did that. I was puzzled by what. And then the Dolphins, did they trade up a spot or they trade down a spot? Right? They let the Cowboys come up and take Caleb Downs, which, by the way, that was a nice move by the Cowboys. You did not have to give up much to move up a spot to take Caleb Downs. That was savvy. Very savvy.
I have no idea what the Miami Dolphins are trying to do. Right now, you go out and you get Malik Willis to be your new franchise guy after you let Tua walk, which is a decision that I supported because I just don't think he has the chops anymore to be an NFL quarterback, unfortunately.
And he's too beat up. Like, he's past the point of no return when it comes to you've just taken too much punishment.
100%.
Yeah.
But what weapons are you giving Malik Willis? Good Lord. We're talking about, you know, questions about the Titans and Carnell Tate, and is he a 1, is he a 2? But at least they went out and got him a weapon, and they put an effort into doing so. The Dolphins wide receiver core right now is like Malik Washington, Jalen Tolbert, and Tutu Atwell. What are you asking this dude to come in and do for your organization when, I mean, now – maybe they have a game plan, and round 2, they're going to load up on wide receivers or try to make some splash and make some trades and get more in the second round. I don't know the answer to that. I understand the Dolphins have a lot of holes, but I mean, at this rate, Devon Achane is going to touch the ball 40 times a game because he's going to be their leading receiver and their leading rusher. Like, I thought that was crazy. I thought that was absolutely crazy.
Yeah, just some of the picks we like, Trev. And then there were some guys that I was a little surprised didn't get picked up yesterday, just kind of looking at some of the best available players. You know, both of the Tennessee corners fell out of round 1. I'm not super surprised that Jermod McCoy fell because of the knee stuff that people have talked about. I get that. Emmanuel McNeil Warren, the safety from Toledo, there's a lot of people projecting him in the top 20, 25 that I saw. Denzel Boston's a guy that was a regular in the first round mock drafts. He fell out of the first round, Trev. There's a lot of good football players available on day 2. So I'm curious to see kind of what goes there. And then we did see a mock draft from ESPN. I'm trying to see who had that. It was from Matt Miller, and he had the Rams taking Malachi Fields in the second round, which would be huge to see that. So that'd be awesome. But those are just some of the things we saw, Trev. And I know we had some mailbag questions about the draft, so we'll get to those here in the next segment when we kind of dive into the mailbag. But we wanted to just wrap up the NFL draft stuff first. Obviously, we hope to hear Malachi Fields. Hopes to hear his name tonight. It's unlikely, but there's an outside chance that maybe like an Eli Raritan or a Billy Schrouth could kind of sneak into the end of round 3, depending on how certain things go. Is there a run on tight ends? Is there the run on offensive linemen already started last night, so that kind of moves everybody up, including 2 guys that are going to be projected to play inside. Which I didn't know that the Giants were looking at Maui Noah as an inside player. That's what they said last night. They're going to have him at guard. That's going to be a big flipping offensive line, man. Like, that's going to be a monster offensive line. And I think that makes sense. I mean, look, I think he could play right tackle in the National Football League, but I think he could be an elite guard. I really do think that. So we'll see how tonight goes. But it's going to be a busy weekend for Notre Dame. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that.
Brian, to take us home the rest of the day here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by FanDuel, we got the Friday Free-For-All Mailbag, where we get to sit down and answer your guys' questions. Now, we're going to start this off with answering some of the draft questions, with that just having happened last night, and the continuation, obviously, rounds 2 through 3 are kicking off tonight, I believe, around 7. But if this does happen to be your first mailbag, you can put MB for mailbag or a little mailbox emoji. That lets us know to set your question aside. Super chats get bumped to the top, but, man, I'm excited to get this Friday Free-For-All Mailbag rolling.
Yeah, I am too. And we have, I'm just trying to look for see if there's any of the super chats are draft related. I don't see those. So we'll try to get to some of these draft questions first, then we'll get to the super chats and then dive into everything else. But we'll start off, Trev, with Idem Benami. Had a question about the Notre Dame draft picks potentially for the next couple of years.
Do you think Notre Dame has 4 defensive back draft picks in the first 2 rounds next year? 5, maybe. Overall, over 9 in the first 2 rounds next year.
9 players? No. That would be an insanely good draft class. And I'm going to actually look at a couple things here real quick. So if you look at the draft after let's go teams, or let's go college. Let's go LSU and like Ohio State, who had very good drafts. So in LSU in 2020 draft, so that came after their 2019 season, which was a generational season. They had you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys taken in the first 3 rounds. And so you're asking about first 2 rounds. They had 7 taken in the first 2 rounds of that draft, and that was actually they had 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So they had 7. Like that is a lot of guys drafted in the first round. Ohio State last year, their title team had 7 guys taken in the first 2 rounds. So over 9, that would be a really wild draft class. Miami, Florida, let's look at what they did in 2002 after their great team. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys taken in the first 2 rounds. It's like 9 in 2 rounds is a lot of players from one team. I don't care how good that team is. So, no, I don't see that next year. But could they have 4 DBs in the first 2 rounds next year? It's possible, but I would say unlikely. I don't see Adon Schuler being taken in the first 2 rounds for the same reason that Xavier Watts didn't go in the first 2 rounds. And Adon's a heck of a player, but he's not Xavier Watts. If Adon goes out there and runs a 4.4 and then he surprises us, then possible. But I think DB next year, I think there's two guys that I feel confident if they declare next year will be in the first 2 rounds, and that's Leonard Moore and Tay Johnson. I think if all four, you got DJ McKinney and potentially, and then you've got Don Schuler and Christian Gray, there's a chance a third guy gets into the first 2 rounds. I actually have seen 2 mock drafts, Trev, and one of them was Walter Football, so I kind of take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. But I've seen 2 mock drafts now that have DJ McKinney going in the first round, which I'm like, if DJ McKinney was that close to being a first round pick, I don't know that he's coming back to college for a 6th year. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how I feel about that one, or 5th year. But, maybe he does. Maybe he was banged up and his draft stock was low, whatever. Who knows? But I could see him sneaking into day 2, day 3, or day 2 next year. First 2 rounds, maybe. Hope so. And I think Christian Gray right now, if he has the kind of breakout year that we hope he can have, is still probably more of a round 3 guy, like late 2, round 3 guy, most likely. So I don't see 4 in the next 2 rounds next year. But there's a world in which 5 DBs from Notre Dame could get drafted next year. I just don't think they're all going to be in the first 2 rounds. I mean, that's 4 picks, and only 64 total selections. Like, that's at one position. That's not just one school, but one position. That's a lot. But I would love to be wrong.
Oh yeah, I'd definitely love to be wrong, but that'd be a tall ask. Definitely wouldn't be willing to bet on it or anything, but it's possible. But I would not be willing to bet on it.
Like, if you're a 3rd round draft pick, you were a really good college football player.
Heck yeah.
Like, that's the thing. It's like, you're a 3rd or 4th round draft pick. You were still a really good college football player.
From Facilitate, curious how some of our former Notre Dame guys that transferred away might do in the draft. Guys like Pat Coogan, Jaden Mickey, Holden Stays, etc.
Did Jaden Mickey declare for the draft?
I'm not sure.
I didn't hear that he declared for the draft. I would be surprised if he did. He's just a true junior right now. Or no, he's a true senior right now, and he took a redshirt season, so he's got a 5th year. That was whole part of the reason he sat out the 24 season was to gain a redshirt. So
yeah, I
would imagine he'll be back. I would also, Holden Stace has not played the last couple of years. Whenever he comes out, I don't see him getting drafted. And then maybe Pat Coogan does, like late, round 6 or 7. He's a leader guy. He's got tons of experience. He could play center, could play guard. I could see a team taking a flyer on Pat Coogan late in the draft. Just athletically, he's not great, but there's some stuff there.
He'll also get the bump from being on the national championship team as well. I don't think that means he's going to go in round 5, but some team on the final day of the draft might kick the tires on a guy like Pat Coogan. Yep. I can see that.
Agree. Going for Muhammad Abdi.
Brian, do you think Love and Price going first round will reinforce Marcus Freeman's commitment to a run-oriented team, since it will get high-level prospects interested in Notre Dame?
No, I think Marcus Freeman is going to commit to an offense that is always wants to run the football, but I don't think it's going to reinforce anything, because it's still always about doing what we need to do to go out there and win all of our games. And Notre Dame is always going to be a team that wants to run the football. But wanting to run the football doesn't mean you need to be a team that just lines up in 21 personnel with a true fullback and a 265-pound tight end and just says, let's run power O all day either. And that's not what you're saying, Muhammad. I'm making an exaggerated point here, but they're going to keep doing what they're doing, and they're going to tailor what they're doing to the strengths of their team. And the reality is next year, your best player on offense is a quarterback. And you went out and spent the money they spent on their portal receivers for a reason, because they know they want to be a balanced offense. I think that people that think that this team is going, we've said this, people that think they're just going to throw the ball 40 times a game and he's going to put up Joe Burrow 2019 numbers, I think you're sadly mistaken. That this team is going to still be a balanced offense. But yeah, you're next year will be the most they've thrown in a bit, probably since 21 next season.
Agreed.
But that doesn't mean they're still not going to be a team that looks to run the football. I don't know that I like the word run-oriented to describe what they're going to be. They want to be a balanced football team, meaning we can beat you however we want to beat you, and we can do both. That's the goal.
Another one from Facilitate. Reaction to seeing Love get picked number 3 in the draft. His face with Sider and Freeman there congratulating him. Never seen Love look so happy. It was very cool.
That was the most emotion we've ever really seen from Jeremiah Love, which was awesome. He's such a calm, calculated kid. And even in the interview, you just could see he just kind of like he wanted to scream, he just wanted to shout. And for me personally, I'm not going to sit there and act like I'm super tight with the family, but like I've gotten to know his dad real well. And, obviously Jeremiah committed on our show and all that kind of stuff, but just to watch his evolution, Trevor, Notre Dame put some video out the other day of all his highlight runs. And I remember watching the Tennessee State run it. And I'm like, dude, he looks so much different now. He doesn't look like the same guy. He was a skinny, fast kid back then. Now he's this big, thick kid. And you know what he's gone through. And I don't mean that like life's been tough for him, but the sacrifice. I mean, to be that kind of football player, there's a lot of sacrifices that it takes. And just to see the reward for it, he did everything right. He's a kid that turned down much bigger NIL deals to go to Notre Dame. He's a kid that turned down huge NIL deals every year he was at Notre Dame, including after his freshman season. And he did it the right way. And I love to see him get rewarded for that. These stories of kids doing things the right way, and that doesn't mean not, if you transfer, you're not doing it the right way. Well, the number 1 overall pick transferred, but it made sense why he transferred and where he went. But I think that's kind of where I look at is to see just a really excellent young man get an opportunity to live out a lifelong dream that he worked very hard to achieve is just something that I'm very excited about, and then looking at it, there's a nice blend of numbers 1, 2, 6, and we're and 11 were all transfers in the top 11. But numbers 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 10 were all guys that never transferred. So you can be successful both ways. But there's a right and a wrong way to do it. And Jeremiah Love did that, and it was awesome to see him get rewarded for it.
Agreed. It was definitely the most happy emotion I've seen from him. I've seen a lot of emotion from him, like this past year against USC. We saw a lot of emotion from Jeremiah Love, but it wasn't like the happy, like super excited. It was the, I'm giving you guys a business right now type of emotion. From USMA 87, biggest surprise of the draft for you. For him, it was Ty Simpson, but no Denzel Boston.
What about you, Trev? Are you on the same page as him as as far as Ty Simpson being picked that high? I'm kind of not surprised by it. I'm surprised it was the Rams. I just assumed somebody was going to be stupid enough to take him in the first round. But I'm not surprised he went in the first round. I am surprised he went that high. Make sure that I'm clear. I just was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, that was surprising for me. I was surprised that the Titans went back to Carnell Tate because, once Jeremiah Love started to get mocked to either the Cardinals or the Giants 1 pick behind, it was because of Robert Saleh's comments, their defensive coordinator, talking about how they wanted an edge rusher. So I saw one of David Bailey or Arvell Reese mocked to him. So that one surprised me at the time. The Rams taking Ty Simpson surprised me because of like what my belief is for like the layout of NFL wide receivers. It did not surprise me that Denzel Boston didn't go in the first round. But outside of that, I'm also baffled the fact that Miami didn't take a single receiver in the first round either. Like that blows my mind. So those were probably my biggest ones.
And this Ballpeen Shillelagh says, what was Sean McVay thinking? That from the body language we saw in the draft room and in the post draft press conference, that did not look like that was a Sean McVay decision, like at all. No. So I don't know if I would ask myself what was Sean McVay thinking. It'd be more of what was Les Snead thinking, in my view.
100%. From Moneybag Jake, with Notre Dame making history last night in the draft, how will that translate to recruiting? Can it contribute to other positions? Yeah, I mean, look, NFL draft success, the more you have it, the more players are going to recognize that you're putting players out. You're going to start having these graphics where, if they start putting out more first rounders, hey, we've produced X number of first rounders in the last however many years. That's what Notre Dame did with Harry Hiestand. But
Yeah, I mean, it can, but its primary success is going to be running back recruiting. But if you're an offensive lineman, it may help you because you're like, dude, I know I'm going to get to block for dudes. Like I'm going to get to block for guys can do some things with the football, and that's going to be it. Hey, if I'm a quarterback, like, hey, it'd be great to go to a place that I know is going to have great linemen and great running backs, because then that takes some of the pressure off of me to have to carry the team. So there's a lot of things that could impact. But when you start pumping dudes out in the NFL draft, it's certainly important. But it's not just like that. That history thing is cool, but what matters more is, like, so let's say Notre Dame's going to try to use that in their recruiting against Ohio State. What's Ohio State going to say? Yeah, great. You had 2 running backs. Yeah, we had 4 dudes taken in the draft last night. All in the top 11. So it's still about the volume of guys you're putting in the NFL draft, more so than like, hey, it was a cool thing. It was a great thing for Notre Dame. It's a great thing for Notre Dame running back recruiting, but it's still going to be about putting Leonard Moore and CJ Carr into the first round. And I've seen some Kingston Viliama Asa projections, and getting Boubacar taken high, and things like that is still going to be the driver behind bigger picture recruiting success because of the draft. One good year doesn't mean that now all of a sudden, because here's the thing, Indiana can match. They say, look, we had 2 guys taken in the first round. Our best guy got picked before their best guy, and our second best guy got picked before their second best guy. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to have that kind of impact in one draft. It's going to impact that position. It's the overall doing it year after year that will impact more big picture. But there's certain little impacts it'll have. It just won't be like this tidal wave of like, hey, 3 defensive tackles committed to Notre Dame. Why'd you guys commit to Notre Dame? Yeah, I just was watching those 2 running backs get picked in the first round, and I decided, yeah, I'm going to go there instead of going to Miami, who just had 2 defensive linemen taken in the first round. You know what I mean? Like, it won't have that kind of impact. Yeah.
Sidebar, I thought this was pretty funny because I was scrolling on FanDuel to see if they had any odds for Malachi Fields to be taken in the second round, or they had any projections. Obviously, they put a lot of their stock into the first round. But for as much, I guess you could say, support that we gave the Cardinals and the Jets for what they did in building for the 2027 quarterback draft class, do you know what 2 teams have the highest odds to draft Carson Beck in the second round? the Cardinals and the Jets.
No. Figures.
No, it's just FanDuel. I'm not saying they have insight, but
I saw something. Matt Miller did the same thing. He has the Cardinals taking Carson Beck at 34. And honestly, if the Cardinals take him at 34, like, I wouldn't take him that high, but that's better than taking Ty Simpson, in my opinion. Like, I'd rather take a flyer on Carson Beck than Ty Simpson. I'd rather have neither of them. But what's the big knock you and I have on Carson Beck? He kind of gets that look. Well, so does Ty Simpson, but Carson Beck's got a lot more production, and he's won. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty funny.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get to some more of these draft questions. Gabe Weiss, Trev, asked the question, who has the better first 3 years, Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price?
I think it's going to look different because I think Love is going to go into Arizona and kind of be the workhorse, whereas Jadarian, especially once Zach Charbonnet comes back, is going to be more the rotational guy. So, I mean, if we're talking about like who has the better numbers overall, I think it's going to be Jeremiah Love. I think that Jadarian Price is going to be an impactful pass catcher at the next level because we've seen him do it in spurts, but we haven't seen him fully do it as being a meaningful member of the pass game routinely at Notre Dame. So I think Love's going to put up more numbers. But, I mean, if we're talking who has the better first 3 years, I think it depends on what you want to look at, statistics or impact. I'm going to go with Jeremiah Love because he's just that franchise level player. He's going in there to be the franchise player for them. Jadarian Price isn't walking into Seattle to be their franchise guy. Like, they already have that. That's Jackson Smith-Njigba, who broke out last year and is one of the best receivers in the league. So
he doesn't.
Yeah, like he doesn't have to carry that workload or that pressure. So interested to see what Price does. But if you ask me today, I'm going to go J Love.
Got another question here, Trev. Actually, we had a super chat pop in there. Let's see if that was draft. Here we go. This is kind of similar from UT Irish. Drew says, because of the teams they went to, is it feasible that Jadarian Price has a better rookie year than Jeremiah Love? NFC West equals Notre Dame running back heaven. I do think that's feasible. I tend to agree with Trevor where you're drafting Jeremiah Love to be the guy. And it kind of goes in with another question that I'll get to next, which is, I think Jadarian Price is legit a good, like a really good NFL starting running back. He's got to protect the football more because NFL teams won't play with that at all. He's got to hang on to the football better. But it would not shock me if he has a better rookie year rushing the football. That won't shock me because he's going to a better team. And like you said, Zach Charbonnet's got some injury questions and things along those lines. But I mean, I love Jadarian Price. I've been high on him forever. I had him as a top 100 player coming out of high school. I think that got validated. He's another guy that I thought was undervalued at Notre Dame coming out of high school, but he's still not Jeremiah Love. And the fact that Jeremiah is going to a worse quote unquote situation is why it might be close, but it's not. I mean, he's still a better player. And there's another super chat from Tyler Evans. He goes, "What did you think of the teams that took the offensive linemen?" So there was definitely a run, Trev. We talked about that yesterday, that runs happen in the draft. And we didn't see the first offensive lineman taken until 9. And then you had that began where you 1, 2, 3, 4 of the next 6 picks were offensive linemen. Then you had another run start at 17, and then 17, 19, 21 were all linemen. And then you saw 2 more get taken later when Keelan Rutledge and Caleb Lomu were also taken in the first round. So what'd you think, Trev, of the O-line run? We've already talked about Francis Maunoa. We've already talked about Caden Proctor. Let's talk about the rest of those guys that got picked.
Yeah, I think some of the offensive linemen that got picked, it's more indicative of the draft class and people like overreaching than teams overreaching. Because at some point, if you needed to take an offensive line in the draft, you were going to overreach, whether that was the Lions taking Blake Miller, whether that was Monroe Freeling going inside of the top 20, you were going to have to reach for somebody. The only one that I thought was interesting was the Texans trading up to get Rutledge, because everything that I had seen was he was projected to be a second-round guy, and the Texans had like an upper middle second-round pick. So I thought it was interesting that they traded up to get him. I didn't know if they thought or got word that somebody else was going to take him, but that was really the only one. Not even a head scratcher because it fills a need. I mean, if you watch the Texans last year, you know that they have to go get C.J. Stroud some level of protection for him to be somewhat effective.
And he's a bull. Also, and this kid's a bull. He's a physical kid. He's a very physical kid.
He is, but outside of that, it's all to me more indicative of the quality of the offensive line class. I think there was some guys up at the top, and then a clear separation between the next group. But overall, I thought it was good.
Yep. And then, there was a couple other questions about that. You know, Price having the better career, things like that. Like you could argue things like that make it where it's more competitive, but I don't think the Cardinals are like this such a terrible organization that there's just no chance Jeremiah Love's going to be able to do anything. I don't quite view it that way, but we'll see. We'll see, Trev. And this question, this is the one I was referring to earlier. First time in history, 2 running backs from the same team have been the first taken in the draft. Is this more because of Price's skill set or a down year at the position? I think the down year at the position is why he went in round 1. Because if you don't take him, there's a big drop off next after that. So I think maybe it impacted his timing. But Trevor and I have been saying this for 2 years. Jadarian Price is one of the best running backs in college football. It just so happens that he is playing behind who was the best running back in college football last season. That's really what it boils down to. So I think he was that was true because partly, I mean, it's not a great draft class. Would he have been the number 2 pick if Keywan Lacey or Ahmed Hardy came out? I don't know. I have no clue. I have to think that those guys didn't get first-round grades. Otherwise, they'd have come out. I honestly couldn't tell you. But I think it impacted the timing, and it made it easier for him to be the second pick. But I would still take Jadarian Price over any running back that chose to not come out that was eligible to come out in this draft class. I just think he's a legit starting NFL running back. And if he wasn't, I don't think the Cardinals take him at 32. I think they would have maybe traded down and, maybe try to get him later. Or if he gets picked, it is what it is. You get somebody else. So I think it's about him more than anything.
Oh, absolutely. It's also about his versatile skill set he brings to the table. He can also return kicks. I mean, he's only caught like 6 passes last year, and like 2 of them went for touchdowns. Like, dude's a touchdown scoring machine. Keywan Lacey's not returning kicks. Ahmed Hardy's not returning kickoffs. So it's also for his versatility as well.
Mm-hmm.
Another one from Gabe Weiss. Where would Carr be taken if he was able to enter this year's draft?
Not. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I would think probably not nearly as high as we think he'll get picked next year. There'd be several things. Number one, CJ's young and his game is still developing. He was great for a redshirt freshman last year. He wasn't great for, okay, he is this. Like what we said the other day was Notre Dame can win a title if CJ Carr just repeats what he did last year. But if CJ Carr repeats what he did last year, he's not the best quarterback in college football. He's got to continue to grow his game. He's got to be able to grow, from the standpoint of, maybe making some more advanced reads, which I've talked about on the show before. He's got to handle the pocket better. Now, he got better as the year went on, but what do you have, like 3 intentional groundings in like the first 4 games? To just not knowing how to properly evade the pocket. Those things are all part of the learning process for CJ Carr. And just like some of the throws late in the year, the USC throw was just brutal, and not seeing the backside safety rob down against Pitt, like those are all part of his learning process. And that's why CJ, in our opinion, being potentially the top quarterback next year is about projecting improvement to his game that the NFL would have absolutely needed to see if they took him. Like, let's say CJ Carr was decided, they changed the rule and you can come out after 2 years. I would have said CJ Carr made a giant mistake coming out and going to the NFL. Now, would the NFL still taking him high? Maybe. They took freaking Ty Simpson after 1 year as a starter at 13. Maybe CJ still goes in round 1, but it would have been much later than he might get taken next year or potentially in 2028, should he decide to come back for another year.
Yep, same page. From Ballpeen Shillelagh, which team's decision in the draft seemed the most questionable? If the Rams, then whose were second most questionable?
We talked about the Dolphins, Trev. Was there any in the Titans with Cardinal Tate? Were there any others that that you really felt like, just from a pick standpoint? I thought the Saints taking Jordan Tyson. I really like Jordan Tyson. I just 8 with his injury question marks. 8 is high for a guy that hasn't played a healthy season of college football, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Saints. They brought in Jordan Tyson, a wide receiver with injury concerns, to kind of be the heir apparent to Chris Olave, who is a wide receiver who also has injury concerns. So it's kind of like, I get what you're trying to do. On paper, it's like, hey, we got to replace this high ceiling wide receiver with another high ceiling wide receiver. I get that, but the injury questions make that. But no, those other teams that you mentioned before take the cake for me.
Like, I get what the Lions are doing. You're taking a right tackle in the draft, and you need a right tackle because you're going to move Penei Sewell to left tackle because I guess they waived Taylor Decker. I understand that. I just think that's way too high. I just felt there were better tackles on the board, to be completely honest with you. But, Eagles taking Mekhi Lemon at 20. That was much more of where he should have been, as opposed to top 10 to 15. If you're Kansas City taking Peter Woods at 29, I got major question marks about Peter Woods' focus and attitude and all that kind of stuff. But you're taking a guy with top 10 talent at 29. Okay. Like that, I get that one. I thought the Titans were smart because you mentioned, Trev, like you had a pass rusher there. Well, they did trade back into the first round and take a DN, but it's kind of like, is that really the guy that's going to move the needle? We'll see. Minnesota took a big gamble on Caleb Banks. Yeah. Caleb Banks has got a lot of talent, but injuries and then just very inconsistent effort are major question marks for him. And you took him at 18, so you better hope that pans out. You definitely better hope that pans out. But yeah, I mean, there weren't a ton of others that I'm like, oh my gosh, what were you thinking besides those?
Another one from Ballpeen. How much of an indictment on Ryan Day is it that so many Ohio State players were drafted so highly and he wasn't able to do jack squat with them after the regular season?
I mean, they won a title with those players. I mean, let's not forget that every single kid that got drafted in the first round last night was a starter on their national championship team the year before. So, I mean, look, I understand where we're coming from here, but let's also not forget that Ohio State lost to the 2 teams that played for the national championship, who also had a lot of guys taken last night. I mean, Ohio State had 4 guys taken last night. They got beat by the team who had the number 1 overall draft pick, and the other team that beat them in the playoffs was a team that had 3 first-round draft picks last night. in Miami because Miami had Malnoa, Misador, and Ruben Bain. So you had 3 guys taken in the first 22. So, yeah, the Ohio State guys were taken a lot higher, but, I mean, it's not like they got beat by a team that had no talent. So, yeah, I think that I think it says, like, they underachieved last year. But it's not an indictment of Ryan Day because Ryan Day won a title with those players. I would gladly take Notre Dame getting knocked out in the first round of the playoffs by Miami by 10 points if it came the year after Marcus Freeman beat Ohio State for the national championship. Like, if that's my trade-off, okay. But, yeah, I mean, I get where we're coming from, and I do think it's fair to say that Ohio State underachieved this year. But they did get beat by 2 pretty good teams that put a combined 5 players in the NFL last night in the first round. And, you know, there's other holes that, I mean, their defense was not the reason they lost those games. Their offense was. And so, Ryan Day's an overrated coach. Let's just be real about that. We've said it. But the fact is that the dude won a flipping title with these players. And, I mean, how much can I bang on him? And he's 3-0 against Marcus Freeman. So, no, I don't think it's an indictment. Ohio State wasn't a great overall team last year. Immensely talented at certain spots, not a great overall team, and they got beat by 2 other really good teams.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. They didn't lose those games because of Caleb Downs and Arvell Reese and Sonny Styles and Carnell Tate. I mean, and to be fair, if we're being honest about it, Ohio State fans could say the same thing to Notre Dame fans. It's like you guys you guys made NFL history in the draft by having the first 2 running backs ever taken 1-2, and you didn't make the playoffs. And then the rebuttal would be
run the ball on Miami, really?
Right. Like the same rebuttal could come this way. I'm not saying it would annoy me, but that's it's how I look at the Ohio State thing.
Yeah. All right, we got one from. I think we have seen more draft questions here, Trev. Well, if we see more, we'll kind of get to more of those. But let's kind of dive into some other questions here. We got another one from Ball Peen Shillelagh. We'll go here.
What's your take on positional value? I think many overemphasize it, but objectively, having the best left tackle would be more beneficial than having the best long snapper, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I get the point you're making with long snapper, but I don't know that that's the best example. Look, here's how I view positional value. Positional value is one of those things that I would look at as a decision maker, as a deal, as a sort of like things are close and it can a deal breaker. You know, like, hey, look, we like these 2 guys in the draft, and they're both similar needs. One guy's a left tackle, the other guy's a safety. I'm taking the left tackle. You know, one guy's a quarterback and the other guy's a middle linebacker. I'm taking the quarterback. I mean, so like there's merit. You should always, positional value should come into play in decision-making. It should not be, however, that you say, well, this safety was the number 3 player on our board. The left tackle was the number 17 player on our board. So let's take the left tackle at 8 because there's more value at left tackle than safety. That's where I think teams can make mistakes. And we have seen teams make mistakes. I think we saw that. That's why, to me, I would imagine is a big reason Caleb Downs fell last night to number 11. That's why Kyle Hamilton fell. It's why Jadarian Price fell to 32, to be honest with you. I don't think there's 31 more talented players in this draft than Jadarian Price. But you look at the positional value, and like, I think Jadarian Price is a better football player than Caleb Banks and Blake Miller. But they're premium positions, and he's not. And that's what it comes down to. Because, like, what's the big knock that people had on Jeremiah Love last night? You don't pay, and he's now the highest. He'll be the highest paid running back in the NFL the moment he signs his contract. And they're like, you're doing that for a rookie. I'm like, well, yeah, if he's that good, you do it. But like, you're going to turn down the best player in the draft at that spot because what the league tells you should or shouldn't pay for a certain position to take what? So I think you have to consider things like that. You'd be a fool not to consider something like that, but you just can't allow it to make you to overreact and take a big difference. Like, we're going to pass on the number 3 guy on the board and take the number 15 guy on the board because of positional value. Because if a left tackle is number 15 on your board, he ain't a great left tackle. He's a pretty good left tackle. Where the guy that's number 3 on your board is elite. And that would be the difference for me. So I think the as you say, the overemphasis of it can be a problem. But it should certainly be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, all things have to be evaluated. I mean, if let's just say a team like the Chargers, and you talk about positional value, and they have a top 10 pick, and that's where left tackles typically go, and all those things. But if you have Joe Alt at left tackle, you're not going to draft another left tackle based on positional value. Some of it comes on the need of your roster. Some of it's so it has to be factored in. But to Brian's point, it can't be the end all be all.
Yep. We had a really cool question down here, Trev, that I wanted to get to before we get to some super chats. Let me find this question here real quick. It was, let me see here, because we have a lot of them starred, and I wanted to get to this. Give me 1 second to find this. Where is his question? Did I not star it? Here it is. Okay. It's a question from Notre Dame OG 71, I believe is the name. So let's go pull this one up, Trev.
It says, do you think I could get into Notre Dame my rookie year? I'm in 5th grade. I have 30 tackles, 2 sacks, and one fumble recovery. And do you think Notre Dame can make it into the playoffs?
Well, I'll answer your second one first. I absolutely think Notre Dame will be in the playoffs this year. And I think Notre Dame has an opportunity to win the national championship. What I would tell you, my guy, if you're in the 5th grade right now, is I would say don't worry about Notre Dame as the 5th grade. Worry about enjoying being the 5th grade. If you're a young student athlete, do get the best grades you can. Take your academics very seriously. Work hard to be the best player you can be to enjoy your high school career. And then if you're good enough to get to a place like Notre Dame, you'll get to a place like Notre Dame. If you're not, then, there's a lot of other great places to play. I played college football. I did not play at a place like Notre Dame. I did not play at a level like Notre Dame. But I still got a chance to play college football and get a degree and all that kind of stuff. So enjoy where you are now. Work hard at being the best player you can be now. And then, your talent will take care of itself. That would be my advice to you. And just enjoy this moment and don't put all the pressure. A lot of young kids put a lot of pressure on themselves. Say, I got to go earn a scholarship. Enjoy being in the 5th grade. You know what I mean? Just enjoy being a kid. And then, as long as you work hard, try to be the best player you can be for your high school team. And if you have the talent to be a Division I college football player, then you'll have that opportunity. So
well said.
Thank you for the question. Yep.
Yeah.
And then
cool.
Ray, I see your question mark. I see that. Appreciate you. I believe with this, Maury Invictus. Speaking of draft, Trevor was a home run hire. Well, fortunately, I didn't have to draft Trevor, so I didn't have to make trades to get up there. But he was more of a free agent signing than he was anything else. But I tend to agree with that question. So
appreciate you.
All right, we got some super chats here, Trev, that we can get to because we're not in the draft segment anymore. We got one from Wade Garrett.
Appreciate you, man. Hey, guys, what do you think is more important before week 1, development of Will Black or development of the backup quarterback, whomever that may be? Go Irish and have a good weekend.
That's an easy one. That's the development of the starting player, the guy that's actually going to play. The backup quarterback, you hope in week 1 doesn't play. Or if he does, he's coming in to just hand the ball off. Absolutely, it's the development of Will Black. No question about it.
Yeah.
And then we also had yeah, not even close. Sorry, Trev. I just assumed that was definitely a no-brainer. Yeah, it's definitely the most important thing. No question. And then Guy Allegretto had a super sticker of $10. Thank you, Guy, so much. I appreciate you. Let's get back up to some more questions here, Trev. We've got one from Iden Banami.
I'm not asking how much, but I wonder what the situation is on the offensive line with Charles Jagus on NIL. Want him on the team, amazing player, but hasn't played. Wonder how you go about paying him.
I mean, you pay him what guys like him who haven't played a whole lot of football get paid. I doubt Charles Jagasaw is walking into the coach's office saying, hey, if you don't pay me, I'm leaving. I don't think that's the case.
No.
So I don't – it's not an issue right now. It's an issue if after the season he steps up and has a great season and all of a sudden he's a starting player, then it's an issue. It's as much of an issue as, how do you pay Peter Jones or Styles Prescott or any other solid, good backup player that's part of your team who didn't play a down of meaningful football last year. That's how you treat it.
Yep.
So it's actually not actually that big of an issue.
For Moneybag.
Sorry, I've said before, if you want to dive into the linebacker recruiting things, I don't mind discussing that, but that's more of a message board thing. So, Jake, you can bring that up on the message board, and I'll address it on the message board.
From Aiden Benami, nothing is for certain, and yes, we all have summer and fall camp, etc. But after this spring, does it look like Grubbs has the lead at the number 2 quarterback spot? I mean, right now, sure. Some of it is also the last time we were at the full practice in the Jersey scrimmage, Blake Hebert was in shorts and he wasn't able to compete in the team session. Good Lord. And then we don't know what the outlook is going to be for him tomorrow afternoon. So, yeah, if I were to guess, Grubbs is probably in pole position. But again, the coaches evaluate spring in its entirety. It's not just what you did in the Jersey scrimmage and what you did in the blue gold game. Now, I do think that some coaches put more emphasis on bigger things like that because that's a game-like scenario. But, yeah, some of it is just due to the availability of Blake Hebert. And then the other stuff I just can't speak to because of the limited access that we have, and we just don't know. We don't see it. There was one practice report where Brian talked about how Blake Hebert, through warm-ups in the first 4 periods of the day, looked like the sharpest quarterback of the day. So how many of those did he have before he had to sit out the Jersey scrimmage and depending on what he does tomorrow? So based on what I've seen, I would say, yeah, Grubbs is in pole position, but that's up for the coaching staff. They've seen him every single day.
Yep, agree. That's how I see it. I would say if I had to bet right now, I'd bet on Noah Grubbs, but it's, like you said, long way to go. Long way to go.
From Moneybag Jake, who are 3 players on offense and 3 players on defense that can make the biggest impact for themselves in the blue gold game?
Offense, I mean, we just kind of mentioned one. Does the quarterback kind of make his impression felt? Offensively, I would also say Will Black having a good day against the defensive ends is one that pops in my head. And then, I think somebody like a Mylan Graham, pick a receiver, a Mylan Graham, a Micah Gilbert, a Cam Williams, somebody like that, finishing the spring off with a really good day could be something that helps Notre Dame as well. Helps their case as well on offense. Defensively, trying to think, Trev. Defensively, I would say Armel Mukum would be a guy that could have an impactful moment. I'd say one of the freshman ends, perhaps, maybe stepping up and doing some things. And then it's not so much that it's a biggest impact for themselves in like a position or whatever, but Christian Gray continuing to just get more and more comfortable in the nickel spot is going to be an important one. So those would be mine off the top of my head.
Yeah, offense, we see that very similarly. Defense, players that I'm keeping my eye on, like Christopher Burgess, think he has the opportunity to make a splash. He's somebody that could round out that defensive tackle rotation. Secondary, very interested to see what Joey O'Brien does on Saturday. If he can continue that surge to be that number 4 safety, find a spot in the 2 deep. So, yeah, along with some of the players Brian mentioned, those would be some of mine. Super chat from Josh Phillips. Appreciate you, man. Had Price came back, would he have been a top 10 pick?
No, I don't think so. I think Jadarian Price is a really good football player. I don't know that I view him as a top 10 national player. Like I said, I think there's not 31 guys necessarily better than him in this draft, you could argue, but that means like, 20 like early 20s, early mid 20s maybe. Again, I love Jadarian Price. He's not Jeremiah Love. He's not Bijan Robinson. He's not that back. So no, I don't. And the other thing too is now he'd have a lot more tread on his tires next year as well. And so, I don't know that his draft value is ever going to get any higher than it was. And it's probably going to be a much better and more competitive running back class next year, which means, do you take a running back in the top 10 knowing that, hey, you go take this guy and I'll wait and take Kawan Lacey in the second round, or I'll take Ahmed Hardy in the second round or something like that. That's kind of where I'm at. Yeah. Yeah,
man. I mean, you also have to think about some of the players that are going to be coming out next year as well. I mean, if CJ Carr comes out, Dante Moore, potentially Arch Manning, potentially Julian Sain, Jeremiah Smith, Leonard Moore, just to name a few off the top of my head, I don't even know if Jeremiah Love would have went third overall if he came out in 2027 because of some of the other guys coming out. Like, I still think he's a top 5, top 3 prospect.
Like, there's a world in which the top 3 picks next year are quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how good Jeremiah Smith is. It doesn't matter how good a Jeremiah Love might have been or how good, just thinking of some of the guys that what Arvell Reese could have come back. Like Sonny Styles could have come back. Cardinal Tate could have come back. Like, all those guys that went high in this draft could all fall from where they got picked this year in a deeper draft class, especially one that's deeper quarterback. I mean, think 100%. About it, guys. The NFL draft just overdrafted Ty Simpson to the point where he went 13th overall. What are they going to do with next year's quarterback draft class? So that factors in. But even if you take out the specifics of next year, I just don't view him as he's a really great back. I've been high on him since high school, all that kind of stuff. But I just look at it and say I think he's just not quite that level of player. Like, I think CJ Carr is going to be a star, but if he came out in this draft class, I'm like, I'm not taking CJ Carr in the top 10 of this NFL draft. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he could be something, but like, that's a big risk. That's a big gamble that you're taking. We think he's going to be picked high next year. Just same with Art, same with Dante, because of what we think will happen as he progresses and grows his game. That's kind of where we're coming from on that one. Good questions. Let's get to one. He got one from your boy Vince Trowbridge with a question here, Trev.
If Coach Sanders somehow wins 7 games and Florida State has another bad year, can you see him being Florida State's coach next season?
I think you'd have to win more than 7 games, don't you, Trev? Especially with all the health issues he's had and things like that. I think that'd be a tough sell, even for someone that's, I believe, beloved by the alums. But you've only had, in 4 years, you've only had 1 year where you won more than 7 games. Like, I know Colorado's bad and all the other kind of stuff. Like, that'd be good progress. But I think if you hire Coach Sanders next year, it's because the options are not great. And it's not because he's can coach or not. It's just all the other stuff that goes with it, Trev. The other concerns and question marks I have. It's like, how much longer is he going to be able to coach with all the health problems he's having?
That's the unfortunate thing about Deion Sanders is the demand of what's going to be asked of him on the recruiting trail is going to be significantly higher at Florida State than what it's going to be at Colorado. Because their next hire, they're going to be asking somebody to come in and turn around that program. And if Deion Sanders, for different reasons, wasn't able to do it for a sustained period of time at Colorado, why would he be able to do it at Florida State? We can get into he'd have a bigger recruiting base, he'd have a stronger foundation. I think those things are true, but then you start talking about his physical ability to be able to go and do some of those things. I mean, it's going to be tough. Be really tough. We're rolling here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the Friday Free-For-All Mailbag going on, answering some great questions so far today, man. It's been fun.
Yeah, I'm ready for more. You guys have got some great questions in there today. Keep them coming, and we'll get rocking and rolling.
Adam Garcia, which team making it to the title game surprised you more and why? The 2012 Notre Dame team or the 2024 Notre Dame team?
2012. I mean, that team was coming off back-to-back 8 and 5 years, and they were a preseason unranked team. Notre Dame was a talented team in 2024. We thought they were a playoff team going into 2024, so that wasn't a shocking season. It was more about the shocking part was how they rebounded after losing to Northern Illinois. That was the shocking part. But no, I think I had Notre Dame saying they should minimum be a semifinal team in 2024. So that team should have been really good. We thought they're going to be really good. The schedule wasn't a gauntlet. And so, 2012, I did not see that coming at all.
No, at the start of the season, agreed with you wholeheartedly. I will say that, and I'm going with 2012 as well. I will say, though, once the injuries started piling up for Notre Dame as the season went on in 2024, the playoff run surprised me. By and large, I thought Notre Dame was a better team than Georgia, and I thought they were the better team than Penn State. But there was that lingering thought in the back of my head of, is this the game where not having Riley Mills and not having Benjamin Morrison and not having Boubacar Traore and not having Ashton Craig, and is that going to be what starts to hurt you? And it just never came to fruition. But looking at the season as a whole, 2012 was definitely the more surprising one for sure.
Got a super chat from Remington Jeans. I was actually hanging out with Remington earlier today. He was over here with his cousins Robert and Ryan at the house because they are putting a new driveway into our home. So they run a tremendous company that does that, and offering some suggestions around the back where my for I can spend more money. They're giving my wife all these ideas on things to do that are going to cost me a lot more money, which makes her happy. I don't know how happy it's going to make me when I have to pay them checks, but no, they do great work, and I'm excited for them to come in. But they did their walkthrough today, so we're excited about that. So if you guys are looking for any kind of concrete work here, they're pretty booked. So I've been working on getting this. They're not going to come till May, but Robert Jeans, I think it's Robert Jeans Company. Let me make sure I look that up real quick and give them a little plug because they've done great work and been super professional for us so far. But it's Robert Jeans Corp is who it is. So we're excited to see the work. And if you guys are interested, I can take a picture of the driveway that we're making. They're going to widen a little bit. They're going to do our front walk. Is going to be awesome. It's going to be great. They've been super professional. Can't wait to see the work. So if you guys are in town and you're looking for something, Robert Jeans Corp. But Remington also hit us with a super chat, which we appreciate. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Remington. What is your view on Brennan Vernon? I feel like he was viewed highly coming out of high school. Has he just not panned out?
Yeah, he hasn't. I liked Brennan coming out of high school. I'm looking up to see what my grade was for him right here, but I had him as a top 150 caliber guy. I thought he could be a good player. I think a couple things have happened. Number one is I don't know that he was a guy that the previous D-line coach really thought could help, and so he wasn't really pushed. And I just think Brennan is one of those guys that just kind of his game maxed out in high school, and I don't think was like physically maxed out. And I just don't know that as he put on the weight that he put on, I just never felt like he was I thought he should have stayed on the edge. And as he got bigger and put on the weight to play inside, he lost some of the athletic skill that I thought he had coming out of high school. So I think that's all part of it. And then Notre Dame's had some really good players inside. But look, I like the job Al Washington has done, but I just think he made a couple decisions on guys he didn't think could play for him that just he gave no chance. One of them was Brennan Vernon, and another one went to Cal and had over 100 tackles as a 320-pound nose tackle and was a really good football player for Cal the last 2 years. That's Aiden Keanaaina, who could have absolutely helped this football team the last 2 years. Could you imagine Aiden Keanaaina playing in Chris Ash's defense this past year? A 320-pound kid that answered the bell every week? That'd have been huge for them.
Yeah.
But look, sometimes coaches make those mistakes. We all do. I can look back on my career and be like, man, I probably should have played so-and-so a little bit more, given him more of a shot, or coached him up better, or whatever the case may be. And I just think those were a couple of the ones that I just don't think Coach Wash got right.
Agreed with you.
Thank you again for the super chat, Remington. I greatly appreciate it. We got one from, let's get down to Salty Virginia Peanuts with some questions. Here we go.
Alabama is expected to have a two-player competition for quarterback, with one seen as the future at the position. Even if he does not start immediately, how would Elijah Haven affect that dynamic?
I don't think he affects it at all. I think if Elijah Haven picks Bama, did he commit to Bama? I know he's supposed to commit here soon. I haven't seen if he's committed soon. I know he's down to 2 schools. He has not committed yet, but he's down to who was it? It's Bama and Auburn. Who's this? Hold on a second. It's Bama and Georgia, and he's going to commit tomorrow. So I don't think that changes the dynamic at all. I think what that does is kind of like what we're talking about with like Teddy Gerard and Champ Mons and potentially like a Neiman Lawrence or a Lucas Prock or whatever. Those guys are going to compete for who's going to be the next quarterback after whoever wins the job this year, either Austin Mack. Because I think if Austin Mack wins a job, unless he has like a monster year, I mean, heck, he may go pro after 1 year because we've seen the NFL will draft a an okay talent at quarterback at Alabama if he puts up numbers, even if it's not on a very good team. I say a little bit sarcastically, but like it's not a given that he's going to leave. But you got to think if Austin Mack's a starting quarterback all year, that Keelan Russell, I don't know that he's going to stick around. But if Keelan Russell's a starting quarterback, I don't know that Austin Mack's going to stick around. But if Keelan Russell wins the starting quarterback job, then basically the conversation at Alabama is, okay, who's next? Is it going to be Jet Tamala? Is it going to be Elijah Haven? If he picks them, I don't know. Like if I'm Elijah Haven, I'm probably picking Bama in this situation, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, because he's in the 27 class and Georgia already has a 20, like the number one quarterback in 2028, according to some people, is already committed to Georgia. So I don't know how much like that would make a ton of sense. But Kenny Minchey committed to Notre Dame, even though CJ Carr, who's behind him, had already committed. So it's possible, but I think that's more of the debate is who's next after Keelan Russell takes over. I could be completely wrong on this, Trev. I'm just of the belief that Keelan Russell is going to be the starting quarterback this year at some point. It's a matter to me of when, not if. It may not be the opener, it may not be game 3, but I just feel like at some point in time, he's going to be your starting quarterback. And if it's close and I'm Bama, I'm going with him. If it's close, like to me, a guy that's 2 years ahead of him in the system should be way ahead of him. And if he's not way ahead of him, then it's kind of what we said about CJ last year. If it's close, if it's even, you go with the kid that you think is the more highly talented player. And that's what I think Alabama is going to end up doing at quarterback.
Yeah, I think so too. It'll come down for Kalen DeBoer. Like, okay, what do you go with, the higher ceiling talent or the guy that committed to you back when you were at Washington? And it's not that I don't think that he can. I just haven't seen him do that yet. And this will be a good offseason to kind of prove that and go with the higher ceiling kid. I'm with you.
Yep, agree. All right, we got some more here. We got one from Prime Angels.
What would be a harder transition, tackle to guard on the same side of the offensive line or switching from right tackle to left tackle, assuming no experience at either position prior?
It's a really good question. It depends on the player, and I'll explain so it's not like a lazy answer. It depends on the player. Some guys have an easy time switching hands. Some guys can go from playing right-handed to playing left-handed, no problem. Others, it's a really tough task. So I would think by and large, I would think that transitioning from tackle to guard on the same side of the line would be a relatively easier transition for most linemen. Because there's things that are different, calls that are different and footwork that's a little bit different, but it's not a huge difference. And that's why Harry Hiestand used to recruit nothing but tackles, and he just find, where tackles would go. And but switching from right-handed to left-handed for some guys is just going to be just as easy. For others, it's a challenge. It takes some time. So it depends on the player. I don't think either of them are necessarily really tough. I think it's actually tougher to reverse this and go from guard to tackle, because I think playing in space is always the harder thing to do. And that's what makes cornerback unique, receiver unique, offensive tackle unique, is those are positions that are primarily like you're just out in an island. And that's kind of how you spend a lot of your game, and that's why I think that actually would be a little bit tougher. But going from tackle to guard, I don't think is super hard for most kids. Move from right to left, it's not super hard for most kids, but I think that's the one that could potentially flare up as a bigger issue, is the kid who struggles to, play with the opposite hand. And you got to think too, it's also dominant eye. I mean, you're remember the there was an offensive lineman in the NFL, it was Bob Whitfield, and I can't remember which eye it was, but he was blind in one of his eyes, so he could only play on one side of the line. But I think that tells you like how important the one eye dominance is to playing that position. You know what I mean? Is because dude was blind in the other eye and he could still play at a pretty high level in the National Football League. So I don't know if he's like blind, like it was nothing blind, or if it was just like he was legally blind in that eye. I don't remember which one it was, but it's a much different adjustment, where tackle to guard on the same side is just, to me, technically not as big of an adjustment if you're someone who isn't naturally comfortable playing with your opposite hand.
Yeah, and we've seen that a little bit more too, especially going up to the next level than we have seen guys go from right to left. I mean, like Mekhi Becton in college was a tackle. He won a Super Bowl with the Eagles at guard. Robert Hainsey was a tackle at Notre Dame. He got kicked inside the center.
So did Liam
You know,
Eichenberg.
yep,
Yep.
I mean, shoot, Zach Martin was a left tackle at Notre Dame, and then he went down to be one of the best right guards in like NFL history.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he had more Pro Bowls than holds. So we see that quite a bit. So, yeah, I'm with you. From Jay Melvin Bryan, do you think Notre Dame would have been a horrible matchup for both Alabama and Georgia this past year? And if so, do you think they will be again in 2026?
I think Alabama would have. I think Notre Dame would have been a very bad matchup for Alabama. Very bad matchup. I don't think they would have been a terrible matchup for Georgia. I think it would have been very similar to last year. I would have questioned how the offensive line is going to hold up against against Georgia, excuse me. I think Notre Dame would have been able to make some plays in the throwing game and keep them off, like more plays than they made the year before. I think the Notre Dame defensive line probably would have done pretty well against the Georgia offensive line again. I think Georgia would have had a couple receivers that maybe can make some plays here or there. I think the game would have looked a lot like it did the year before, but there's a chance it could have been more competitive because, again, outside of like a 2-minute stretch, that was a very hard-fought competitive football game. It's a lot like we've said this about the Notre Dame Clemson game in 2018. That was a very close game outside of 5 minutes when Julian Love got hurt. It went from like 10-3 or whatever to like 24-3, like that. I mean, it got out of hand in a hurry. You take out the moment from the fumble to the touchdown the next play to the kick return that happened, I think, Trev, actually within about a minute and a half of actual game time. A 6-3 game went to 20-3 like that. It was a hard-fought game. Notre Dame was clearly the better team, but it was the better team. If it wasn't for those couple plays, the game would have looked a lot more like the Penn State game than it did the 13-point win. Now, Georgia wasn't good enough to play catch-up against Notre Dame. I don't know that Notre Dame would have been good enough to play catch-up against Georgia if those two roles reversed, if it was Georgia making those plays late in the game. So I think those are aspects that I look at, Trev, and say, I think Georgia and Notre Dame would have been a competitive football game again. And I think the game would have looked a lot like the year before. I don't mean final score. I mean like physical, on both sides of the ball, who could make the most plays on the perimeter. I think Notre Dame would have wiped the map with Alabama because Alabama wasn't good in the trenches. And the only thing there was really only, in my opinion, 3 teams that I would have been worried about in the playoffs last year for Notre Dame. And it was Georgia. They'd have been third. I think Notre Dame would have beat them, but it would have been competitive. Miami, because, again, Miami's like Notre Dame would have smacked Texas A&M in a rematch. Smacked them. Notre Dame, Miami would have had a very similar feel to what it looked like in the opener. Because the thing is like, well, Notre Dame is a lot better. Yeah, so was Miami, who was also playing in game 1 of a new defensive coordinator and with a new quarterback. Like Miami got better in November and December as well. It wasn't just Notre Dame. But I still would have said, can Anthony Knapp and Emil Wagner block 2 first-round draft picks for 60 minutes? I don't know. And Ruben Bain was a monster in the playoffs last year. And then the other one's Indiana. I think those would have been the 3 toughest matchups for Notre Dame. You could maybe throw Ohio State in there. I just don't think Ohio State could have scored on Notre Dame. Like, just their offense was very mediocre. But I don't think Ole Miss would have been a competitive. I think Notre Dame might have given up 24, 27 points on Ole Miss, but scored over 40. Ole Miss would have had 0 chance of stopping Notre Dame's offense last year. The way it was playing late in the year, no chance. I'll throw Ohio State into the mix simply because Notre Dame has yet to figure out how to beat Ohio State. So it'd be foolish. I'm looking at just from a pure matchup standpoint. I just don't think that team would have been a tough matchup. But as we've seen, neither should have the 23 team have been a team you couldn't score on either. So you throw Ohio State in there. I was not worried about Oklahoma, not worried about Texas A&M, not worried about Bama, not worried about Oregon. Because, again, look at Oregon when they played a team that actually had like good coaching and good line play. Oregon was going to choke. I don't fear Oregon the way a lot of other people do. I think Notre Dame would have smacked Ole Miss. I think those 4 teams would have been the ones that would have been tough matchups for Notre Dame, and Georgia's part of that group.
We see that the same. I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
And it's not that I don't think Ole Miss and teams like that are good football teams. I just think Notre Dame was way better than they were. And they would have had a really tough time defending this Notre Dame football team. All right, let's see here. We got some more questions here. Let's bring up this one from Gabriel Weiss.
If J. Love had returned to Notre Dame, would Notre Dame have a better or worse chance of winning a Heisman this year, thinking pass and run game would be split more and starters out of games sooner?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, you could also argue that maybe Jeremiah Love carries the ball even more this year since he's not splitting carries with Jadarian Price. That would have been it too, maybe. I mean, so it's give and take, but I also think you might have gone into the season kind of with they start picking apart his game, like other teams do. But I think you could, at the end of the day, what I would say is Notre Dame would be the most dominant team in college football if Jeremiah Love returned next year. And it would be kind of like 2020 Bama. A Bama guy is going to win it. It's just which one. That would be more of, I think, what the conversation would have been next year, assuming Jeremiah would have stayed healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing that would have been interesting if J. Love elected to return, would Jadarian Price have also elected to return? Because maybe it's just my view of them of like a package deal almost. It's just, they bought into and supported each other as a running back duo. So I very well could have seen that. Odds to win the Heisman probably would have went down overall. Like I don't know if CJ would have still been one of the favorites on FanDuel to win the Heisman Trophy like he is right now, but I would have been interested to see what Jadarian Price would have done if Jeremiah Love elected to come back. I think that's interesting.
Well, what would Jadarian Price have done in the draft last night if Jeremiah Love came back?
Sure.
I mean, I think that might have been part of their conversation. Like, dude, you go now, you get yours, and then I'll get mine next year kind of thing. But
it's very true.
That'd have been very interesting. Very interesting. I want to get some more questions from people we haven't gotten to yet, and then we'll get back to the top. We got one here from Juan Delgado.
How many games will it take for the offense to find its groove?
Well, Juan, not many. I mean, no later than game 2, but it'll be. There's a chance it could be like kind of like false, like maybe like a false sense of where they are because they're just so much more talented than the teams they're playing early in the season. They could kind of just come out and out talent people, and I can still watch the film, and Mike Denbrock can still watch the film, and Joe Rudolph can still watch the film and say, yeah, we have a lot of work to do because we wiped the mat with Wisconsin and Rice, but if we do that, if we don't block this better against Miami, if CJ doesn't make this read against Miami, whatever, then we're not going to be as dominant. And that can be the challenge when you're playing inferior opponents. But I think the offense is going to score a lot of points right away. It reminds me a lot of 2023. I mean, we're sitting there thinking like this offense is going to be unbelievable. I mean, they're scoring 40, 50 a game like it's nothing. They were scoring almost 50 points a game through the first month of the season, and then they actually played somebody good, and the offense looked a whole lot different. You know what I mean? So, I mean, you're talking about a team that 42 points in game 1, 56 in game 2, 45 in game 3, 41 in game 4, and then over the next 3 games, 14, 21, and 20 because they played 3 teams with good defenses. And then they got back to playing bad teams again, 48-58. And then they played a Clemson team with a decent defense, 23. And then they played 3 teams with bad defenses and went 45, 56, and 40. So sometimes you can look like you found your groove, but you haven't really found your groove. And so, but I don't think this team is going to take a long time to need to find its groove. There's a lot of guys that have played a lot of football on this team. So I think the first few games, they'll start to click pretty well.
Yeah, I don't think it'll take long. The interesting thing about this is 23 is a very valid reference because I thought that offense was about to be just absolutely insane, dude. I thought that. But the benefit is with this year's offense, it's not a first-year offensive coordinator. 23, you had Jared Parker stepping into that role, and you had a one-year quarterback in Sam Hartman, albeit a very experienced quarterback. But you got CJ Carr coming back. This is his second year being with Mike Denbrock. A lot of familiar faces. The receiving core will not be as young. And I think overall across the board, the offensive line is going to be better. I don't know if they have a Joe Alt on it right now, a Joe Alt in 2023 on it right now. But, yeah, it'll be interesting which one takes the day. I'll be very curious. But I'm with you. I don't think it'll take long either. From Sean Stewart, which of the players in the tight end room will have some of the best spectacular catches this season?
Well, I mean, it depends on who plays, but if everybody plays, it's an easy answer. It's Jack Larson. I mean, he's got the best hands on the team, regardless of not a tight end, not in the tight end. He's got the best hands on the team, in my opinion. And we've seen him do it. We saw him do it in the blue gold game last year. We saw him do it in the Jersey scrimmage. He will make spectacular catches of tight ends that will. I mean, if Jack doesn't play a lot, I don't know. Maybe James Flanagan, maybe Ian Premer would be my next two best options. But yeah, all things being equal, like everybody plays, it's Jack Larson, and it's not close. His ball skills are unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. If all playing time is split, I'd go with Jack Larson. I could see it being like a Cooper Flanagan for like a catch and traffic type of deal. Like if he's like the number one guy, like spectacular in that sense.
Durham Smythe stuff that he had, like remember that he's catching seam routes and getting drilled, and yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, spectacular in that fashion. I could see that too. From Timothy Church, my daughter is going to Tennessee in the fall. What are the chances they make the playoffs?
I mean, look, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, Trev. It depends on their quarterback situation, Timothy, is really what it comes down to for me. And their D-line's got to come together. That's if their D-line's got to be as good as I think it can be, which is not great, but it's honestly their defensive line should look a lot like Notre Dame's 2024 defensive line. Whereas, like, maybe you don't – Riley was pretty good that year, but, like, you don't have a Reuben Bain. You don't have a David Bailey type of guy, but you've got just a lot of good football players. And then you're great at linebacker, and you're good in the secondary, and you've got a really good offensive line, and you've got skill players on offense. It's going to come down to their quarterback. That's really what it's going to come down to. And can Josh Heupel build a locker room that actually is going in the same direction? That's the one thing he has never done at Tennessee, is build a team where the culture is such that everybody in the locker room is going in the same direction. Because that's hard. That's hard always, but it's even harder nowadays. And that's a challenge for Marcus Freeman and Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, Dabo, everybody. It's like, look, I'm doing my thing, but when you step in this locker room, we are all going in this direction. And the problem at Tennessee was they're getting in fights in the locker room because they're beefing about who's getting credit and love and money and all this other kind of stuff. And that says a lot about the type of culture that Josh Heupel's building at Tennessee. And that's a big concern for me. But just looking at the roster, if they figure out the quarterback position, they got a shot to be a really good football team this year.
Yep. Agreed. They're a dark horse in the SEC for me right now to make the playoffs. Got some ifs that they got to sort out. But if they get them figured out, they could be a dark horse.
Yeah. Got a two-part question, Trev, for you. First one from Investor 23237 is, what is the biggest surprise of the draft so far, in your opinion, Trev? What's the one thing that was the biggest surprise? Let's take out Ty Simpson being picked 13th, because that I think is an obvious one. What was the other biggest surprise to you in the first round, good or bad?
Yeah, just off of flat out my reaction, I was very surprised the Titans went back and took Carnell Tate at number 4 overall. That's tied with me with the Dolphins electing to just not take a wide receiver at all. So those are probably my two. Tied for first.
All right, here's the other one from Investor. What is the biggest steal of the draft?
Oh, gosh, the biggest steal?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know we talked about how it filled a need, and obviously there's a little bit of bias going into this, but, I mean, taking a running back as talented as Jadarian Price with the final pick of the first round at number 32, I think that's such a good steal. I mean, they easily could have taken an offensive lineman and built depth in the trenches and just kind of rested on their laurels of like, yeah, well, there's still, both Penn State guys out there. Emmett Johnson's still out there. We can still get a guy. But getting him in the last pick of the first round, I think, is a steal, because you got a guy that can come in and be the number 1 running back on day one while your rotational guy works back from injury, and he can also impact your kick return game.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think the biggest steal is somebody that'll be determined later. And I think most guys fell for reasons, and nobody had like that dramatic Randy Moss, Warren Sapp fall, Brady Quinn type of fall. I think we'll look back and be like, it'll be something along the lines of like, man, I can't, like, let's say Monroe Freeling puts it all together and plays to his talent level, we're going to look back and you got an all-pro left tackle at 19. Holy moly. Malachi Lawrence is a twitchy, explosive athlete that's still kind of learning how to play football. If he figures it out, it could be like, man, I can't believe you got Malachi Lawrence at 23. And then a guy that I'm keeping my eye on as a potential name like that too, Trevor, is I said it earlier, it's Peter Woods at 29. That's a top 10 talent. And if he matures the way he needs to mature off the field and on the field, you're going to look back and be like, man, this is why the Chiefs are freaking always winning, because they're finding these guys, at 29 who's like an all-pro every year, and he's this dominant player. Like that is one that I got. It's not a steal now because I understand exactly why he fell to 29. But I always feel like steals are kind of the ones that if it's not an obvious like a fall, and I don't know that I really think anybody was like that. It's going to be one of those guys we look back and be like, I can't believe this guy fell to 19, or I can't believe this guy fell to whatever. It'll be something along those lines.
From Douglas Seduth, what do you feel Price is in a better position being drafted by the Seahawks to be more successful in his rookie season than Love?
Yeah, we answered this one a little bit earlier, Douglas. Actually, earlier. He put this question in before we got to it, and I wanted to bring it up and give you some love for it. I think the interesting about Love, and I wanted to add this little piece to it for me, is I think the key here is ultimately going to be about how well can the Cardinals get Jeremiah Love involved in the pass game. I think that's ultimately what could come down to Jadarian Price or Jeremiah Love having the better first season. Because if it's just pure running the football, then I don't know that could Jeremiah Love have a great freshman rookie year? It's possible. He's that good. We've seen him win the Doak Walker Award behind a not great offensive line at Notre Dame last year. But to me, it's can you find other ways for him to impact the game beyond just running the football to help your quarterback out, to help your line out, to help your other receivers out? I think that ultimately is going to be the key to whether or not Price is able to have a better season because of the better situation. That'd be my 2 cents.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. From Irie3, so happy for Price, man. Hope he crushes it in Seattle. Feel like in today's era, 95% of kids in his situation transfer for the biggest payday. Such an easy kid to root for.
Yeah, and this is a statement, not a comment, which I loved, and I'm with you on this one. It's a great story because, like you said, he had in today's era, he had every single reason to leave. There's no player on the roster who people would have more understood why he went into the portal last year than Jadarian Price. Like, look, man, he's a good player. He's freaking behind Jeremiah Love. I get it. He wants to be the guy in his last year of college football. I understand. But he didn't. He stuck it out. And it's not because he lacks competitiveness, because we've heard story after story after story, but those two are always going like back and forth at each other in a good way of like, oh, okay, you ripped one off for 60. Wait till you see what I'm about to do, which I love. And it wasn't just in games. It was also in practice. And, Mike Denbrock did an interview with Brock Heward before the draft because they were, that's how on the radar this pick was. This is why Trev said this was not a surprise that he got picked at 32. They brought Mike Denbrock on the day of or the day before the draft to talk about Jadarian Price. And one thing that Mike Denbrock talked about, and if you think about it, it's very true. He goes, look, there's been a lot of, he's like, look, Jeremiah's a this, but there were a lot of games this year that we didn't really get going until Jadarian came in the game and gave us that spark. We talked about that during the season. That was true in the Miami game too, and that's something that he doesn't get enough credit for, but he's just an excellent young man, and you're super happy that things are going to work out well for him, or worked out well for him on draft night.
100%.
Yeah, very happy for him. All right, we got some super chats that have popped up here. We got one from Tom Connor. Thank you, Tom.
Appreciate you, Tom. Notre Dame recruited Julian Sain and CJ Carr. Am I right in thinking Reese liked Carr better and they could have had either one? If so, I'm glad he did. Am I misremembering?
No, you're not misremembering that at all. If Notre Dame wanted Julian Sain, they would have had Julian Sain. Tommy, look, I just flat out tell you, Tommy Reese told me this. He said CJ Carr's the best quarterback I've ever evaluated. That's what he said. The last time an assistant coach at a school told me that was when Dan Mullen told me that about Brady Quinn when he saw him at Michigan's camp. So Brady turned out to be pretty good. But now, does that mean he was right or wrong? That is to be determined. And it could end up being like it was a win-win. Like he'd have been fine with Julian saying, and he'd have been fine with CJ Carr. They're both great quarterbacks. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's not always Peyton Manning versus Ryan Leaf. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, it worked out for the Broncos that they got Elway, and it worked out pretty well for the Bills that they got Jim Kelly, and it worked out pretty well for the Dolphins they got Dan Marino. Like it kind of worked out well for all of them in that draft, and it could end up being that at the two, but there's no question that CJ Carr was the top quarterback for Tommy Reese. He liked him also more than Dante Moore. So yeah, that's how highly Tommy Reese thought of CJ Carr coming out of high school. And this was
heck of a parting gift.
A sophomore going into his junior year. Heck of a parting gift. You were not wrong about that. Not wrong about that at all. All right, we got one from Joseph Barrett.
How good is Joe Alt? Heard his name mentioned a few times as a standard of comparison. He had some injuries in his first season, correct?
So talking about the NFL?
Yeah.
This is more a question for you, Trev, because I haven't really watched Joe in the NFL.
Yeah, he's good. If I could compare his career to like a Notre Dame level, it's kind of like how we've talked about Billy Schrauth. Like when he's on the field, it's undeniable that he is one of, if not their best offensive linemen. When Joe Alt's on the field for the Chargers, he is their best offensive lineman. It's just the when he's on the field part that needs to get fixed. He could have came back at the end of last year. That's kind of my understanding of the situation, but they thought, hey, let's just go in, clean everything up, get his ankle set right, and then he'll be ready to roll for the 2026 season. So that's the biggest thing for him. That's how I feel about Joe Alt. But yes, he is good.
As an offensive player, I do think he's a bit of a standard comparison. It's the guy, if you're okay, are you elite? How do you stack up against Joe Alt? Because he could literally do it all. He was a very good run blocker. He was an elite pass blocker. He was huge. He was athletic. He was smart. He was tough. He had all those traits that you look for. I mean, there really wasn't a trait. You say, okay, I wish he was could block like Orlando Pace blocked in high college, right? Like, sure. So wouldn't everybody? Because to me, in my lifetime, that's still the standard for, okay, what's a truly generational left tackle look like? It looks like an Orlando Pace. Like that's still the best left tackle I've seen in college. He was he was unbelievably good. Also, the only other lineman I've seen with a bigger head than him, and I mean this not figuratively, literally, is probably the Aaron Gibson kid from Wisconsin that he has to get special helmets made for. You remember that kid, that big offensive lineman Wisconsin had back in the day, that they had to get like specialty helmets made because none of the helmets they had fit his head? Orlando Pace had a big dome, but he was an unbelievably good football player, man. Unbelievably good football player.
From J. Melvin, Brian on 247, CJ Carr's comp was Mac Jones. Was that a good or bad comp? I know your comp for him was Joe Burrow.
Yeah, but I was also very clear to say, like, it's a skill set comparison, not a predictive comparison. I still think that the Joe Burrow comparison is better because I think CJ's a better athlete than Mac Jones, but I can understand why someone would compare CJ to Mac Jones. Mac didn't have a cannon for an arm. He was super accurate, great decision maker, did all of his best work from the pocket, wasn't really a threat to run. So I could certainly understand that. I think CJ will have a little bit of Trevor Lawrence in him, in that the longer he starts, the more you'll see him use his legs to make plays. He'll never be like a guy you're designing a run game around, but you'll see him manipulate the pocket better and take off running for 15, or keep a ball on the outside and make a play. We saw him do it in the one of the practice things. We saw him do it last year against Boise State. He did that little fake of the kid on the edge and then took off for 20 yards. As he gets more comfortable, we'll see some more of that, and then you'll be like, yeah, okay, now I can see why he's not Mac Jones. But I could understand. You guys know I never pass up a chance to bang on 24/7 for being terrible. But that's a fair comparison. in my opinion. Like, it's not the one I would use, but it's not one where I'm like, did they just compare CJ Carr to Justin Fields? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that would be absurd.
Right.
Comparing CJ Carr to Mac Jones is totally reasonable. Yeah, totally reasonable.
Agreed.
I mean, guy had a phenomenal, I mean, it's not an insult. You know, like maybe you're thinking that, and I'm not saying Jay, somebody might be able to look at that and say, I can't believe that the disrespect for CJ Carr. Well, why do you think that's disrespect, man? Have you seen Mac Jones in the NFL? Like, well, I don't think that's necessarily the comparison. You know, it's more about what Mac Jones was from a draft standpoint, which is more of a top 15 pick as opposed to a top 5 pick, which is fair. I mean, I don't agree with it. I think CJ's better than that, but I get it. And it's also, but it's like, look, if CJ Carr ends up passing for 4,500 yards, completing 77% of his passes, throwing 41 touchdown passes, and only getting sacked 4 or getting picked off 4 times, which is exactly what Mac Jones did his last year, I'll take it.
You sign me up for that.
Sign me up, brother. Yes, thank you. Yes, please. You know, sign me up. I'm all about that. So that's a reasonable comparison.
Yeah.
That's a very reasonable comparison to me.
For Moneybag Jake, what do you view as the first man in and first man out for the wide receiver rotation?
So let's work with the assumption. Well, first man in will be whoever doesn't start between Jaden Greathouse and Mylan Graham. That's the first man in. Next man in will be whoever doesn't start between Micah Gilbert and Quincy Porter. And first man out, I mean, I think first man in and first man out is, I think I just kind of answered, right? The first man out is, I mean, I guess I'm not sure how to take that as a first man that doesn't start. It's whoever doesn't start that one. If it's if they play like a 5-6 man rotation, it just depends on how deep they go. My guess would be the first man out will either be Cam Williams or Elijah Burris would be my guess. One of those two, if they don't make even bigger jumps in the fall. But they're both battling.
Yeah, agreed. If we're talking big picture receiver rotation, like the 6 man, it'd be probably one of Cam Williams or Elijah Burris, but I'm with you. For Maiden Benami, yes, it's feasible for him to play a lot, etc. But do you think Porter is behind the 8 ball kind of big time due to missing spring ball?
No. Malachi Fields didn't play down a spring ball last year. Bo Collins didn't play a down a spring ball the year before that. Both of those guys had a lot more experience than Quincy Porter, but no, I don't think he's behind the 8 ball. Would it have been better if he got playing time? Yes, but this is different than quarterback, where there's so much that Riley Leonard missed as a quarterback, because the quarterback has to be on the page with everybody else. Quincy Porter just has to worry about Quincy Porter. Then it's up to CJ Carr to figure out how to get on the same page with him. Yeah.
And
no.
I don't think he's going to be asked to come in and be asked to dominate the reps at boundary the way that Bo Collins had to, or the way that Malachi Fields had to. I think the emergence of Micah Gilbert puts him in a situation where he could just be more of a rotational piece, whether he's the number 1 guy against Wisconsin or not. Like, I don't think that the boundary this year isn't going to be just dominated by one sole person. And I think that's going to help him out as well.
If it is dominated by one sole person, it'll be different than what we've seen in the past, because it'll just mean one guy is a monster.
Yep.
Not that, well, you really don't have anybody else, which has kind of been the case in years past.
Yep. From Salty, it seems that Trinidad Chambliss and Marcel Reed will be asked to carry their teams this season, but they both can be up and down. Are they up to the challenge?
Well, I think Trinidad Chambliss is. I don't know that I would call Trinidad Chambliss a guy who was up and down. I think he was pretty good last year, Trev. I mean, everyone's going to have a game where they're not brilliant. I mean, nobody's dominant from start to finish, but I thought once Trinidad got in the starting lineup, he was pretty good all year. I mean, South Carolina game, maybe. Georgia game, I thought he was fine in Georgia. I thought the offensive line got their butts kicked in the Georgia game the first time. But they had a lead in that game for a bit, so I thought Trinidad was pretty steady. I don't know that I would throw him in the same category with Marcel Reed. I don't think either of them are capable of carrying their teams the way that I think they're going to be asked to carry their teams this year, which is why I'm not as high on either team this year.
Yeah, I think Marcel Reed will be asked to be carried the team a little bit more for a couple different reasons. One, I don't love the outlook of the offensive line in Texas A&M as of right now, more so than Ole Miss. And I also think between the two, I think Ole Miss has a better running back coming back in Kawan Lacey over Reuben Owens. I like Reuben Owens. I think he's a good football player. But Trinidad Chambliss will have that to lean on a little bit more than what Marcel Reed will have to lean on with Reuben Owens and a completely rebuilt offensive line. Now, we can get into the conversation of who has the better receiving core and who has the better weapons, because I think you could consider Texas A&M in that discussion over Ole Miss after losing Harrison Wallace and Dewan Stribling. So I think that is interesting, but by and large, I'm with you, man. I don't think it was Trinidad Chambliss having an up and down season. Marcel Reed, I think we could see a little bit of that more so this year.
Agree.
Another one from Salty. Does South Carolina have a quarterback that can follow Sellers and potentially step in for him if necessary?
Well, I was kind of hoping that Aaron Nolan was going to go there and stay there. I thought that was a kid that could have maybe been that guy. I'm honestly not familiar with their depth chart at quarterback. I thought they signed a kid a year ago that was a good player, but just give me a second to see if I'm remembering that correctly. So just give me a second. Landon Duckworth is a good player. It's not really who I was thinking of. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Landon Duckworth would have to be the guy. He was a solid player coming out, but I don't really see that guy right now on their roster. Probably be a portal guy. Spend some money in the portal would most likely be. Here's another question. We'll get some of these from Salty knocked out here now, Trev.
Will Arkansas match the offensive production they had last season?
I don't think they'll even be close.
No.
They lost a lot from their team last year. and not just the NFL.
Bobby Petrino.
Yes, Bobby Petrino. It's a big part of it, right? You're losing Taylon Green. You're losing your Mike Washington, who might be the next running back taken. A 6'1", 215-plus pound kid who ran a 4.3 to combine. You lost your best tackle, who transferred to, we were just talking about him yesterday, Tennessee, correct? Didn't he? Or no, it was Oklahoma. Transferred to Oklahoma, I believe. And you lost Jaylen Brown, who got hurt against Notre Dame. He's out. You lost a lot of talent from last year's team, and Bobby Petrino. Your quarter, yeah, they're not going to be that good on offense.
No.
Yep. I always love when people come on the site or in the chat and say, I heard that so-and-so's big this week. And I'm like, yeah, we had that on the message board. Like, did you not, yeah, I heard that too. That's why it's on the message board. But yeah, so it's a pretty funny one. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Irish Eyes. Love it. But anyway, here we go.
From Salty Virginia Peanuts, does Kentucky have the offensive lineman to protect Kenny Minchie, or will he be running for his life and making plays off platform?
I think that's a bit of a question mark that they have, Trev, but they tried to address that this offseason. They spent time in the portal doing that. One of the moves they made was one of the biggest surprises of the portal season. That was Lance Hurd jumping in the portal to go to Kentucky. He was the starting, I think he was the starting left tackle at Tennessee last year. And jumps in the portal and goes to Kentucky. So I mean, he was kind of just looking for a payday, it would seem. But that was a surprise for me. That was a very big surprise for me. He's a good football player. So that was kind of a to catch you off guard. This is a guy that was a solid left tackle in the SEC. He knows how to play in that league. They got Tegra Shabola from Ohio State. Now, part of the reason he jumped in the portal, despite being a multi-year starter at Ohio State, is because he was not likely to still be a starter at Ohio State. Kind of like why Pat Coogan left. But for Kentucky, that's a really nice pickup. That gives you a big physical guard that can play some football there. So, I mean, they definitely took steps, Trev, this offseason to try to, fill out their depth chart. They got the Allanen kid from Alabama, who's an okay player. They got Colton Price from Baylor, who's a kid that's got some tools. So I think they certainly took some steps to try to address the issue. The question is how will that group come together? Like, since I believe, Trev, let me look real quick. I think 4 of their 5 starters, if not 5 of their 5 starters this year, on the offensive line will be transfers. So there's always some level of question marks. But look, we talked about this at the time. I love what Kentucky did in the offseason on offense beyond just Kenny. We said, look, you go get Kenny Minchie. That's a good quarterback, but that can't be it. And it wasn't it. We just talked about the offensive lineman that they went and got. You know, we talked about Hurd and Shabola, Colton Price at center. But they also went and got C.J. Baxter from Texas, who's a kid that's got some talent, who was 2 years ago was, or 3 years ago was one of their better players before he got hurt. They got Javante Barnes from Oklahoma, who, rushed for over 500 yards 2 years ago. They went to get Nick Anderson out of the portal in hopes that he can kind of return to the form he had at Oklahoma when he had 10-plus touchdowns as a freshman before he got hurt. So there's certainly some guys they've gone after, Trev, to try to get and upgrade what they're doing offensively. So I really like what they did. Now we'll find out if they can put them all together and bring them all together and get them to produce. But they certainly did their best to try to go make something happen and build a roster around Kenny Minchie. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I have no questions about the support that Kenny Minchie is going to have. My biggest question with Kentucky is what they're going to do on defense. That's more of my concern. I think offensively with Will Stein stepping in there, it's probably going to be one of the more productive offenses that they've had in quite some time. It's just, are they going to be able to hold serve on defense? I think that's a huge question for him, but I'm with you. I think they gave Minchie some good supporting roles for sure.
Now it's just about coaching them up.
Getting into the next part of the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got the Friday Free-For-All Mailbag going on. USMA is getting us kicked off here in the next part. Thoughts on how bad ESPN messed up the broadcast? They still had number 7 on the clock when number 10 was being announced.
That was a joke. That was so bad. So bad. But honestly, it was expected. That's how day 2 and day 3 of the draft have been every year. They don't announce every pick live. Like, the 8 minutes in between picks is just not feasible for TV. It's just not, because you can't have teams waiting, but a guy gets picked. That whole process takes a couple minutes. Then what kind of analysis you're giving? And ESPN's not cutting back on commercials. I mean, that's not happening. So it's not good TV. It was really bad TV, in my opinion. I mean, we already know pick 7, 8, 9, and 10. And like you said, they're waiting to announce number 7. It was bad TV. That, in my opinion, it doesn't affect the draft because the teams aren't watching TV waiting to hear what's happening. They already know what's happening, but it made for bad TV. It really did. And I thought took the moment away from some kids to a degree as well, Trev, because everything was rushed. The analysis was rushed. The announcements were rushed. The interviews were rushed. Like that poor lady asking these kids questions. First of all, half of them didn't know how to answer a question, and maybe she could answer a little bit better. But she's like, "You got like 2 questions, lady. That's all you're gonna get." And then we got to move on to the next one. It was bad TV, in my opinion. What say you, Trevor?
Yeah, one of the funniest things is when Mekhi Lemon got drafted, the first clip that they showed was him torching Christian Gray in 2024, but failed to put any highlight tapes of what happened to him in South Bend in 2025.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Yep. Yeah, it's freaking that's an odd kid. That's an odd kid, bro.
That's a good way to put him.
That's an odd duck right there, man. So, all right, let's get to some more questions here, Trev. We've got another one from Prime Angels.
How crucial is it to have an elite freshman class to make a long run in the playoffs like in 2024?
I wouldn't say like it's crucial, like it can't happen if they don't step up, but I think it's important because you're going to need it for depth at certain positions. You're an injury away at defensive end from now your freshmen have to play. You're an injury in the secondary away from your 2 deep has got a bunch of freshmen in it. So yeah, it's important. I mean, your backup quarterback could end up being a freshman. It's important, but it's if the freshman class doesn't really make an impact this year, Notre Dame still absolutely can make a deep run in the playoffs. I think they just make it easier and make it better if they step up and play. So
agreed.
That's kind of where I'm at.
A lot of it's peace of mind too. It's like knowing the amount of depth of talent you have waiting in the wings, especially from like our job. We've talked before about the depth of Notre Dame's roster. And, if you lose this guy, and then if you lose this guy, and then if you lose this guy, then Aiden Pouncey steps in. Some of it's just peace of mind for the coaching staff as well. But I'm with you. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say crucial, but it doesn't hurt. That is for sure.
Yep. All right. Here we got another one from Gabriel Weiss.
What can fans be looking for to learn from the blue gold game?
We did a show on this yesterday. I think kind of what we're looking for in the game, I think would be good for fans. I think the big thing is you want to see this kind of the competitiveness in the lines. If you're someone who likes line play, I think the battle between the first team offensive line and who they're going against is going to be important. Second one would be, for me, it's going to be, I want to see the receiver step up and make plays. I think those are things to learn. But I think that's overall what fans should be able to enjoy is being able to say, hey, this team's really athletic and fast. I think that's one of the big takeaways that people can get from this football team in the spring.
Yeah, I enjoy it being out there. I would just look for big overarching things. Is this team competitive? Are they having fun? Are they disciplined? Things like that. And like we said yesterday, you take everything with a grain of salt. You live in the gray. Everything you see in the spring game is not going to be indicative of how the season's going to turn out one way or another. That's always my biggest thing with the spring game.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. All right, let's get to another question here from Sean Stewart.
What matchups this season are intriguing, and who would be on upset alert?
Trev had one that I thought was a really good one, and I'll bring it up now. We're going to do a show on this in the summer, so I don't want to get too far into this, Trev, but I know you've got a really good one that you wanted to get to for upset alert.
Yeah, Alabama's on upset alert for me during the Iron Bowl. Like, Kane Womack has a lot to show me to elevate the level of discipline on that defense. And if there's one quarterback that I wouldn't want to face with an undisciplined defense is Byron Brown and that Auburn offense. I right now I have Auburn pulling off the upset in Tuscaloosa in the Iron Bowl this year. I think that's going to be real interesting.
I love it. I really hope that comes true. That'd be absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Here's one, Trev. I've got a team on upset alert. Indiana at Washington, November 21st. That's one I've got on upset alert.
I like that.
Yep.
I like that a lot.
Been holding on to that one, and I keep ducking the question, but that's one I wanted to get to. I'm not saying that I'm predicting them to lose. Like, I'm not as confident in that as Trevor is in Auburn beating Alabama, but it's one that I've definitely got my eye on when I look at the schedules.
From Jay Melvin, Brian, do you feel like football, both college and the NFL, is having a bit of a climate change? It feels like football is becoming more older school dominant lines of scrimmage than running backs.
Well, I don't think college football ever stopped being that. And I think that's where I think maybe we've missed the boat a little bit as fans is the NFL's that way, but college football's not that way. I mean, college football still. I mean, look, when Oklahoma had those great teams like with Baker, they were still averaging over 200 yards rushing per game. Now, some years that was the quarterback, but it wasn't the quarterback when it was happening under Baker Mayfield. It might have been that way in 2018 under Kyler Murray, but that wasn't the case when Will Fuller. When Baker Mayfield was the quarterback. That's for darn sure. So I think college football's always been a bit of a running football team or a running situation. I mean, Clemson in 2018 had a really strong running game. You go back to 2010, Auburn won with a running quarterback and good running backs. I think that's always been the case in college football. Line play has always been the way. NFL is where I don't think that's accurate. I don't think the NFL is that way now. Do I think it'll eventually get back to that? Yes. But I don't think the Arizona Cardinals are expecting to dominate the line of scrimmage. That's why they took Jeremiah Love. They're taking him because he's a home run back. He's an elite talent that can do a lot of things, catch and running and all that kind of stuff. But as is the case with anything else, it's cyclical. It'll transition back at some point in time because what happens is you start seeing a certain aspect come into the game. And right now it's the passing game and the throwing. And so some team is going to go out there and just dominate for a few years running the football with a great offensive line. Let's say the Jets, rebuild their defense, and CJ Carr's their quarterback, and next year and all that stuff, and they go out there and like they're just whooping people with Breece Hall, okay, and like completely change their program around with the run game, and I'm using that dramatic example, or some other team, the Ravens are able to figure out a couple things, and the next 2 years they're just a dominant team with Derrick Henry just running it down people's throat. Guess what happens? People start to adjust to that dominant team. We have to play differently on defense to go that way. And then other teams like, hey, it's a lot cheaper to get one great running back as opposed to 3 really good receivers. And, and so we're going to go that direction. Give us a Brock Purdy at quarterback. And, or that's actually a good example. Let's say the Niners go on a bit of a run where Kyle Shanahan wins a couple Super Bowls and loses one. And the next 5 years, the Niners are just a great team with Brock Purdy at quarterback. Because why? Because they run the football. Then you'll see it, it's a copycat league. The cycles come from copycat league. And the reason that teams are able to find that success is because it's like when Jim Harbaugh went to Stanford. Everybody in that league was trying to stop USC and Oregon, who were spreaded out teams. And this is even before Chip Kelly was there. And so Stanford comes in saying, well, we're going to play 12 personnel and we're going to run the ball down your throat, and nobody's built to stop it. And you win. And then other people say, hey, we want to do it that way. Or when they're winning that way, and Alabama's winning that way, and Georgia's winning that way, and Notre Dame's winning that way, so we're going to play that way. So that's kind of why these things kind of cycle. And we'll see a day again somewhere down the road, Trev, where teams get back to valuing running backs a lot more than they do now. I don't know when that'll be, but it'll happen. It might be when our kids are taking over this or something like this show, you know what I mean? And we're old and retired, but the reality is, well, when you're old and retired, I'll be dead. But, it cycles, and it'll cycle again.
Most likely. I'm with you. From Gabriel Weiss, if you were in the Cards room, would you have drafted Love at that point? Some fans were wishing to beef up the line first, but I think he's too good to pass.
He's too good to pass, and there was nobody on the offensive line that I'm taking at 3. And I'm not someone who is sold on Arvell Reese being a pure edge rusher yet. I'm just not. And so I'm not taking a proven the best player in the draft, and I think he is the best player in the draft. I've said this before. I think the 2 most talented players in the draft were Jeremiah Love and Arvell Reese. They're the 2 most talented players in the draft. I don't have questions about Jeremiah Love like I have about Arvell Reese. And that's why, to me, it'd be a no-brainer in that situation. And then, that takes some pressure off Marvin Harrison Jr., who's hasn't lived up to it, gives you another weapon with Trey McBride and all those type of things that Trev was talking about earlier. But he was the best player in the draft, and you're going to get him at 3. Don't overthink it.
Here's the reality, Gabe. If they take Jeremiah Love like they did, there's going to be people talking about how you overdrafted a running back and they should have beefed up the offensive line. If they didn't take Jeremiah Love at 3, people would have been talking about how do you pass up on the best player in the draft when you could have taken him at 3rd. It's just, you're always going to find that. There's no such thing as a perfect draft.
And even if you even if everybody agrees, there's been times, Trev, where everyone's like, oh, of course you got to take that guy there. And the guy doesn't pan out. I mean, exactly. But he was the best player in the draft, and he was there. You had to take him, in my opinion.
100%. Super chat from Philip Hodman. Appreciate the super chat, Philip. Thoughts on Dylan Thieneman going 25th to the Bears? Missed a lot of tackles against the Irish in 2024. Was that game an anomaly or a bad sign that he can't compete against elite talent like Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price?
Well, I mean, that was a terrible game plan, and they were asking that guy to be 15 yards off the ball and pedal at the snap and then come flying downhill. I mean, there's no safety Xavier Watts is not tackling Jadarian Price in space like that. And I know that because I've seen him not tackle Jadarian Price in space in practices like that. But like, I don't think Dylan Thieneman was like the top 15 pick-ish area that some people were predicting him for. I don't think he's a first-round football player, although he was much closer to that this past year at Oregon than he was at Purdue. But I think he's a good enough football player with the elite athleticism to where 25 is a place that I'm like, yes, that's a place where I'm comfortable taking a shot at him, a shot on him there. I'm okay with that. You just have to understand he's got maybe a little bit of boom or bust in his game. But if he booms, you got a all-pro safety at 25 because the athleticism is elite. It's just a guy with that athleticism shouldn't be at 25. I don't care what the positional value is. He's a far better athlete than Caleb Downs. He's just not close to being the football player that Caleb Downs is. So, you just have to understand that's what you're getting a little bit. But 25 is a good place to take a bit of a gamble on him, in my opinion. Trev, what say you?
Yeah, the pick is interesting. I mean, he's an athletic freak. I think we've established that, and I agree. He ran like a 4.35 40, crazy vertical jump. And I understand from need on the roster, they needed to replace Kevin Byard because he's now gone. I think the biggest thing that's going to be interesting with him is looking at his career with the Bears is what takes a day. Is it overall athletic skill or is it football IQ? I think in terms of being a good football player, Dylan Thieneman is about middle of the road. He's not bad, but he's not great. I think he's just a good football player. Mm-hmm. I'm also under the impression that even though he's not the type of athlete that Dylan Thieneman was, Oregon's getting a bump with Coy Parrish because I think he's a better football player. So the other thing too is like pairing him along with Jaquan Brisker, who's also kind of like that downhill thumper at safety. So now you just have two downhill thumpers at safety. It kind of reminds me of like having more athletic versions of Tom Zibikowski and Chinedum and Dukeway, and you're, kind of protecting the back end of your defense. So I think that's interesting, but I mean, it's still early. I'm not ready to call him a bust by any means, Brian. I know you're not either. So it's just, if it pans out, it could work out really well because he is a freak athlete, man.
Yep. And that's why I say late first round, take a flyer on some of those guys. You just don't do it in the top 15. That's where I'm like, you don't take gambles on guys in the top 15, in my opinion. That's why you keep picking there. Got a super chat from Ken M36. Says, can't wait for tomorrow. Thank you for the super chat, Ken. And I can't either. He just got a little excited. He said he saw Aeneas Williams in the bookstore. So very cool stuff, man. Very cool stuff.
Nice.
Here's one that I saw that we'll get to here.
From Morio Invictus. Is there an unwritten rule at Notre Dame pressers that if you ask an unpopular question or press Coach Marcus Freeman on critical issues, that you might not be called on in the future or possibly barred for the future pressers?
So I think if anyone at Notre Dame media is going to answer that question honestly, it is me, because I feel like I've been the person most willing to be critical of the Notre Dame media. Is that fair, Trev? Like, I will call them out, no problems asked. I have never once had anyone at Notre Dame, especially under Marcus Freeman, make even a hint to me that if I don't back off my criticism of Marcus Freeman, the program, or the media team, that I'm going to lose access to Notre Dame, that I'm not going to get credentialed, that they're not going to let me, whatever. I've never had that happen. Now, they may not like you and they may not give you a scoop, but you're not. So that's life. You're not owed that. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have a right to that. I've never had that. What I think you all have to understand is this is not a White House press briefing of a president who's not in the same party as most of the media. This isn't how press conferences are going to go for Notre Dame on a Monday. This is information gathering, storytelling. That's what it is for people to write stories about the upcoming team or what just happened. This is not I'm going there to call Marcus Freeman out. For what reason? What story am I writing that I need to challenge him on that? If I have a problem with something Marcus Freeman does, I come behind this microphone and I say, he screwed up here. He didn't do this right. He didn't do that right. I don't need him to admit that. Because what's he going to do? Yeah, you know what? I can't believe I freaking hired Chris Ash. That might have been the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. Or say, hey, we sucked here. Hey, guys, we had good calls, but Carson Hobbs just doesn't know how to cover anybody. Like, what exactly do you want him to say? This is not the format for this. It was the same thing that happened during the Brian Kelly era. There's a big difference between the way you talk and communicate when you're sitting behind the microphone, just sharing your opinion like we do. But too many times people that sit in seats like ours think that it's the same thing when you sit in that press conference. I'll tell you how I view the press conference. I don't like the fact that people call Marcus Freeman Marcus. I call him Coach. Now, that may just be me, but that's a different animal. I'm not there to challenge him on why he picked CJ Carr over Kenny Minchie. I'm there to get him to explain why he picked him so that the fans can understand. The other thing, too, is the one thing that the Notre Dame media does to keep this kind of from happening is you only get 2 questions, and then they move on. So there's not really an opportunity to follow up with a lot of stuff like that. But the job at a press conference is not to call Marcus Freeman to the carpet about whatever thing you think he should be called upon. It just because, A, he's not going to give you that answer. Like, if you're upset about Chris Ash being the D coordinator, what do you think he's going to say if I were to go there and hammer him for 5 straight questions about the defensive coordinator position? He's not going to give us the answer we want. We're not going to feel better afterwards. And it's just then you're like, man, that guy's just kind of a dick. He just kept yelling at Marcus Freeman about something. It's like, what do you expect them to say? So, like, that's kind of thing is it's a different type of press conference. This is not a political press conference where Marcus Freeman's decisions impact whether or not my taxes are going to go up next year, or whether or not we're going to go fight a war in another country, or whether or not, people are going to lose their rights and privileges or gain rights and privileges, or whatever other thing that we may be debating about. Like, I had a dude come to my house last week, and he's advocating for a candidate for the local position that has to say, I said, you want to get my vote, get rid of property taxes. And he gives me this spiel about why we need property taxes. I said, okay, let me ask you a question. Do I own my home? He goes, yeah, you own your home. I said, so if I don't pay my property taxes, can you take my home? Well, it's not me. So, okay, can the government take my home? Yes, we can. Then I don't own my home. You do. You're renting it to me. Like, that person should be challenged on the things that they say and do at their job. I don't need to go have the same confrontational debate with Marcus Freeman as to why he picked Kenny Minchie over CJ Carr, or CJ Carr over Kenny Minchie. I just need to ask him in a way that gets him to explain his answer so fans can understand what the answers are, and then we'll find out if it's right or wrong. I just don't view press conferences that way unless it's something along the lines of like a Mike Vrabel press conference where, okay, so you're cheating on your spouse and this chick's speeding on her husband. What do you have to say about that? That's not what those are for, in my opinion. These are information gathering and storytelling. That's what they think they're, and answering questions. Hey, what's the latest with Charles Jagasol? Hey, I can't believe, Coach, you let him live his life and be a teenager and ride a vehicle like that. That's a choice he made. He's a grown-up in America. If he wants to ride a vehicle and put his career at risk, that's his choice. That's his life. I'm not going to not let him do it. So I just feel like it's okay to ask questions that are probing and to get a legitimate answer. And I think sometimes we do a not very good job of that in the Notre Dame. You have actually good questions, but asking a good question doesn't mean that I'm asking a question where I'm doing something unpopular or going at him in a way to create some type of thing. I just don't view it as that way. Now, somebody else may view it differently, and that's fine. But I don't view it that way. But I can honestly say if I changed my opinion and said, you know what? Screw Marcus Freeman. He won't come on my podcast. So I'm going to go to I'm going to go to these shows and I'm asking very tough questions. And nothing that has ever happened in my tenure going back to 2010 have ever had anyone threaten to take my credentials away. Now, Brian Kelly did things behind the scenes to try to hurt my business, but he never did something like to take my credentials away. I got called out by a media person once, and that was after the 2011 Wake Forest game. And honestly, he was right. I was still new at this, and I asked Brian Kelly. He had gotten asked like 5 dumb questions in a row after they beat Wake Forest. And I was asking a question, basically talking about, like, you guys had, you remember that game, Trev? They really struggled throwing the ball in the first half. And then they made some adjustments in the second half. Tommy had a really good half, and Tyler Eifert went off, and Michael, Floyd went off. And so I asked him about the struggles, and then I was going to set him up for a question about, okay, what you guys did a good job with adjustments and all that. Well, in my inexperience as a reporter or asking questions, I didn't read him at all. And I didn't see I did, but I didn't think he was going to respond the way he did. He was getting pissed at the dumb questions. I'm like, well, I'm going to ask him a football question. My question would have been totally fine if I just would have reversed the order. Hey, you guys did a great job making some adjustments. You guys made some, I should say that, you guys made some really key adjustments that allowed you to do this in the second half. and then allow them to do that way, and then kind of follow up with a, well, what was it in the first half that they were doing that? It's about how you ask the question. And they got on me about that. But you know what they never did? If you ever ask a question like that again, we're going to yank your credential and not let you ask questions. Never had a conversation about that. And I don't think that they would. It's just more so about what are these things for? And somebody says tough questions is a different thing to Dick. I think he gets asked plenty of tough questions. But when you only get 2 questions and he's not going to answer that the way you want him to answer that. So you just wasted a question. And now I don't have a story to write because I had this planned out. I think he's asked plenty of legitimate questions. It's just I don't think people understand what these are for. These are not debates between politicians who are trying to earn my vote. And so I just think it's a very different situation, in my opinion. And this has been something that people have been complaining about going all the way back to Brian Kelly's tenure. I'm sure they complained about it during Luke Holtz's tenure. I just don't think that's what press conferences are for. Not for a football coach. Unless there's a specific thing that happened. Notre Dame football team got into a brawl after a game. Yep, you're going to get some tough questions after that. Deservedly so. But I think Free gets plenty of tough questions after losses. But what do you want us to do? Hey, coach, why does your team continue to suck in September? Well, you ask it a different way. You know what I mean? I mean, like, what exactly do you want him to ask? He gets asked plenty. You can see him getting pissed off after some of the press conferences when they lose, which I get. And no one's ever said, hey, man, you better tell. I've never had anyone at Notre Dame tell me what I should ask either. Hey, man, you shouldn't ask about that stuff. It's just not something that I've ever experienced. And I can only speak from my experience. And I don't know anyone that covers the team that's had that issue either. Well, there's one person, but that's because they ask questions that they have no business asking. That's kind of my thing. But yeah, I just, that's not something I could ever see Notre Dame doing because I don't think they would cross that line. And I've never even heard a hint of them doing that. So I hope that answers your question. It's a very fair question, and you're not alone. So don't take my passion for answering it the way that I did as somehow saying it's an inappropriate question because I completely understand why you're asking it. I just think people need to, and then there's people that will rail behind a microphone about, oh, the media doesn't do this. I'm like, well, then you know what? Get a credential and come ask those questions yourself and see how that goes.
From Gabe Weiss.
We got that.
No worries.
That was the one from earlier. Got that one as well. Here we go. This is the one.
From Raymond Harton. Does Larson not block well? Seems like he's made some of the best catches the last 2 blue gold games. Thanks.
He asked great question. I mean, sorry, I was reading someone down there. Somebody said great questions. I'm reading what somebody wrote. He has great hands. I mean, he has phenomenal hands. And it's not even that he doesn't block well. It's simply about just other guys who are just overall better players. Part of the reason Jack makes great catches is because he's always kind of covered. Because he just doesn't quite have that burst to get the separation in. He's not as big as some of the other tight ends. He's not quite as fast as some other tight ends. But the other reality is Jack is just at Notre Dame at a time when they're really talented at that position. And I mean, look, if he'd have been here in 2013 to 2020 or 2019, there's years he's the number 2 tight end, if not the starter. He just happens to be here at a time when they're really loaded. And he just doesn't quite have the same skill set as other guys have.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed completely.
Yep.
From Salty, should Jackson Arnold have transferred from Auburn?
Yeah. He wasn't going to play at Auburn. Oh, I guess it depends, Ref. Did he want to play football? Did he want to start a quarterback? Then, yeah, he probably should have transferred. He wasn't going to play at Auburn.
No. Where did he transfer to?
UNLV.
Gotcha.
I just looked that up because I wasn't quite sure. But, yeah, he's going to, which is more of the level he should be at.
Yeah.
That's more of his level.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one from Salty. Nicholas Harbor is a genetic mutant capable of playing multiple positions. Some feel that wide receiver was not the best choice, but he insisted. Was he wrong?
Well, it depends. Was he wrong in that he wants to play a position that he's happiest with? He didn't want to play a position that was going to require him to add a bunch of weight since he's a track guy. That was a big part of it as well. No, he wasn't wrong. I mean, look, I probably would have had a better career in college if I'd have stuck at receiver than I played quarterback, but I wanted to play quarterback. It's my life. It's what I want to play. And they agreed to it. So he wasn't wrong. Now, is receiver the position where he had the highest upside? No. And I think that's kind of maybe where you're coming from with the was he wrong thing. I think there's other positions he might have been better at, but I thought he could have been a really good outside linebacker, defensive end, but a guy like that, if he wants to play receiver, that probably tells you a little bit about his mindset when it comes to physicality. Maybe he wouldn't have been as good of a player there. So that's why I don't think he was wrong. It's his life. If that's when he wants to play, then let's let him play.
Agreed. And then from Salty, should Notre Dame as an elite recruiting program eschew taking early commitments as elite players tend to commit later?
No. Look, building a roster is not in real life is not like building a roster on college football 2026, where you literally just get like 19 5-stars, and that's just kind of how it goes. You need guys that are not always elite players. Number one is another question that you asked. If I sign an elite running back every year, what are the odds that I can keep all of them all the time? Yeah, it's not feasible. You need guys that are program guys. You need guys that are gritty, good depth players. You need guys that are niche players. Some guy like Nick Reddish is a perfect example. Like, is he as good as Joey O'Brien? No. Was he a smart guy to take into class? Yeah. What's ironic is he was one of the last guys to commit, but that's a different story for a different day. But I don't agree that the elite players take early commitments. Rodney Dunham committed before this date a year ago. Ebenezer Utade committed before this date a year ago. They got plenty of elite players early in the past. You take the best players you can, and then you keep recruiting the other guys. If the guy's going to commit in December, then you can recruit him until it gets to December, unless you have someone of equal talent that'll commit sooner. It's about building a team, a roster, not a recruiting class. And the recruiting class is meant to build the roster, not be ranked number one. And so sometimes that means you don't take early guys. But I mean, who have they taken early that doesn't fit that mold? I mean, James Holter's a very talented top 100 offensive lineman. Xavier Hassan's a top 50 national recruit. Ace Olson is a top 100 player. I don't know that, to me, Lathan Wissington is underranked, but there's not a better running back on the board than Lathan Wissington. And honestly, the more I've watched him, the more I'm like, I'm kind of happy that Keemon Spell went to Georgia, because I can't wait to see what that kid's going to do in this offense. So I don't agree with the premise. Not all elite players commit late, and Notre Dame won't stop recruiting elite players just because they get somebody else to commit early. We saw that last year.
Yeah, I mean, we saw it even before. I mean, we were both under the impression that CJ. Obviously, I wasn't with Irish Breakdown yet, but we both thought CJ Carr was an elite recruit. He was committed to Notre Dame forever,
way early.
Yeah.
Yep. So I just don't see it the same way. But you eschew early commitments of players that you don't think can help you win a championship. Like Notre Dame a couple years ago took a couple running backs that they thought the GM at the time was like, we can over recruit them. And I didn't agree with that strategy. That's unfair to those kids. You don't take a commitment from kids knowing you're going to over recruit them in that class and then drop them. That's wrong. You don't do that. But that's not what this staff is doing right now. So I have no problem with it.
From Jay Melvin, you said that Chris Ash's defense is very different from how you prefer your defense. What are the core principles of a Chris Ash defense, and what are the core principles of a defense you prefer, BD?
I'm just more of an aggressive type of guy. I look at it from a standpoint of what gave me the most problems as a coach and what are the things that I think Notre Dame can recruit well to. And I just feel like if you can be a team that can go play more aggressive, tight man coverage, that is a team that is multiple in how you attack me, that's going to, maybe I might hit a big player here or there, which is, that's fine. But that big play is going to require me to throw an absolute dime, or have a dude on the outside. And I just feel like teams that are more aggressive and bring pressures from different places while also maintaining some level of gap discipline against the run are the best defenses. I'm not a bend but don't break guy. It's just not my style. But you know what? That worked out really well for Clark Lee. Right? I mean, there's a lot of different ways to be successful. I wouldn't run the defense the way Chris Ash wants to run the defense. I'm not a big fan of heavy zone because I've always found teams that ran a lot of zone as a quarterback and as an offensive coach, I can find holes in your zone. If your corners is out there locking my dude down, I don't know what the heck you want me to do. You know what I mean? Like, let Leonard Moore cover a zone instead of a player and see how that works for you against the better teams on the schedule. That's kind of where I'm at. And it's a personal preference. Like, I'm a zone guy. There's teams with great run games that run gap schemes. They're not right, and I'm wrong, and I'm not right, and they're wrong. It's just there's different ways to do it. But there's certain principles that go into being successful with both, right? It's your players got to be well coached, your linemen got to be physical, they've got to work well together. You need a back that can read the defense and all these other type of things. You got to scheme it in a way that protects the weaknesses of that scheme. Same thing with, a coach who wants to run a lot of zone. There's good parts about it and things that aren't good. You've got to be aware enough of the areas where you're vulnerable and guard against them, and then try to make sure that you're building around the strengths of your players. And you can win different ways. It's just I have a personal preference on certain ways, and other coaches have different ways. And I think I'm right. They think they're right. But at the end of the day, I'm smart enough to realize that there's not just one way to be successful. There's not just one offense to run. Otherwise, everybody would run it. And then it just comes down to who's got the best players. And it's, as we just learned in this past year in college football, that's not always the case. Great coaching with really good players can get you a title. We got a couple super chats pop up, Trev. We got one here. We got one from Ken M, but now we got one from Tyler Evans.
Appreciate you, Tyler. Marcus Freeman was on the College Game Day set with Nick Saban and a crew, and Nick was shocked. They had meetings at 6:45 a.m. Marcus Freeman's response was, "They have class," with a smirk. I kind of laughed at it like, duh.
I didn't see that.
It was funny. Nick Saban was talking about, like, man, like, I thought I worked my players hard. You guys got stuff going on at 6:45 in the morning. Like, that's, and Marcus Freeman was like, well, I have to get him to class.
Yeah.
So that was
awesome. He's like, what's that? Yeah. Bama Jones, man. Bama Jones. Oh, my goodness. That's funny.
From Double Bogey Like a Champ, what's your favorite all-time football names? Mine are Michael Stonebreaker and Colt McCoy. Something about them just scream football.
Michael Stonebreaker is a great name for a middle linebacker, and that's what he was. It's an absolute great name. I always thought Golden Tate had a great name.
Yeah.
I mean, you're playing at Notre Dame and your name's Golden Tate. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of flipping awesome. That's why I think there's I want either Dallas Golden or Elijah Golden to be great, not just because I ranked them high and it's good for Notre Dame, but like, you want those guys named Golden on your football team. You know what I mean? Like, how do you not win a championship if you're Notre Dame and you got two defensive starters with the name Golden? Come on, man. Like, that's a given. But yeah, I always think like names are like, you don't have a lot. Like, who's the last really successful football player named, Bob Smith? Like, you got to have a kind of a cool name. You know what I mean? But sometimes like, well, yeah, that name sounds good because you know how good that guy was, and you've said it. But yeah, Golden Tate was one of my favorite ones. I thought Tony Rice had a great name. It just kind of fit at Notre Dame. But yeah, Golden Tate was one of my favorites. Michael Stonebreaker is one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, Michael Stonebreaker is a dope name for a linebacker.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember back when, it was like a couple years ago. It wasn't too long. Like, Ohio State had some names at linebacker too, like Steel Chambers.
Yes,
like that's a crazy name for a linebacker. Bro.
Yes.
That was a good one. I'm with you. I loved Golden.
Didn't they also have a kid named Tough Borland?
Yeah, Tough Borland and Steel Chambers.
Yeah.
Like, that's.
I don't know if y'all are any good, but you got sweet names. Yeah,
I was about to say, like, I don't know how you are as a football player, but that is an all-name team.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Yeah, no doubt about that.
Yeah, those are some good ones. From UT Irish, our guy Drew Rainey, I've heard a lot of sports people today saying that the Jets have made some serious moves. Does a quarterback like CJ make them a contender in the next 3 to 5 years?
Like someone like CJ, if CJ makes the improvement that we think he can make, someone like him, Arch, Dante, if they all are as good as we think they can be, it makes their offense good enough. From what I can evaluate as someone who doesn't watch the NFL but looks at rosters, I think their defense still needs a lot of work. And they traded 2 very high draft picks, former draft picks this past offseason in Quinnen Williams and this past season in Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner. So they're definitely taking steps to get their offense going. Now the next steps is to kind of figure out your defense. And they took a big step to address that last night with David Bailey. And I won't be shocked if like their first pick of the 3rd round is a, defensive player as well. But yeah, it could make it in the next 3 to 5 years. If they continue to draft this way, yes. But I could also see the Jets as being the Jets and like they completely waste this good start to the draft. And next year they, I could see them ruining it too, because it is the Jets. But yes, it's a good start. Let's see if they can build on a couple of these on top of each other, Trev. That's going to be the key. I felt like there was a year recently where I thought the Jets had a good draft and they ended up like not keeping them, or maybe they didn't pay it. I'm trying to find out when that was.
The Jets are going to do something like build up this great, franchise for this quarterback to walk into in 2027, and then they're going to take like Lenora Sellers. Like they're going to
number 5.
Right. They're going to pass on CJ. They're going to pass on Arch, and then they're going to take like Lenora Sellers
I mean, they've had some good drafts recently, Travis. 22 is the year I was thinking of. They got Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, Breece Hall. I don't think Jermaine Johnson panned out. I don't think he's still with the Jets.
He might actually still be there. But
let me look here real quick.
The Jets made a conservative effort this past season to say like they're essentially cleaning house. Like they're keeping Garrett Wilson because they need a wide receiver 1, but they got rid of Quinnen Williams. They got rid of Sauce. Mm-hmm. Like they're in complete rebuild.
So it looks like he was with the Jets last year, but he signed it looks like he's with the Titans now. Mm-hmm. So he played with the Jets last year, but he's now with the Titans. So he is not with them anymore. And hasn't done, he's only had 3 sacks the last 2 years. So it looks like he had some injuries he had 7.5 sacks the second year, but then only play 2 games next year. And with an injury. But yeah, it's it's possible, but they gotta rebuild that defense a little bit.
Yep. Super chat from Gavin Schmavin. Appreciate you, Gavin. USC with all these media jabs at Notre Dame should be diagnosed with little brother syndrome.
1,000%, dude. Like, it is like you guys are so unoriginal and petty, and not even a good petty. Like, dude, you clearly jacked us, right? Like you're trying to mock us. You want to be us. You don't want to play us. You want to do all this stuff. You ran and hid like little children, and then tried to blame us for why you're running and hiding like little children, and it's like, come on, dude. Indiana could win in 2 years, but USC now in year 5 is like, well, we're now entering our window. It's like we needed 5 years to rebuild USC, so I mean, Pete Carroll rebuilt it a whole lot faster than that, and he didn't have the portal. By year 3, I think 3 or 4, they were dominating. But it is certainly little brother syndrome, and I think a lot of it is just like trying to be relevant, because USC just becomes more and more irrelevant. Honestly, it's kind of sad, to be honest with you. It's like you do your talking with your pads, do your talking with this. Oh, well, you can't. Okay, I got it. That makes sense, because you can't do your talking with your pad, so you got to do it this way. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, it's 100% little brother syndrome. Yeah, it's no other way around it. You got to find some way to hold on to relevancy. If you're taking to social media to do it, then hats off to you.
I forgot to tell you my favorite draft comment last night was from my wife. So I told her about Jadarian getting picked, and she goes, "There's only one problem. That offense is still going to struggle with Bo Callahan. He's no good." I said, "Babe, that movie, I think he's retired since then." She just looks at me like, "Did you catch it? Did you get it? Did you catch what I did there?" Because she loves watching draft day. Every year before the draft, she has to watch draft day, which is hilarious. And I like watching it with her. I always enjoy watching it before the movie. Get to the scene. You pancake eating. I just love that scene. I don't know why.
From Double Bogey Like a Champ, what do you think are realistic expectations for North Carolina and Bill Belichick this season?
Get to a bowl game.
Yeah.
I think that's a realistic expectation. I'm not saying they're going to get there, but that's a realistic expectation. Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah. Winning season, like, or at the very least, like 6-6 for sure.
Yeah. Just get to a bowl game. I think that's a good step in the right direction. And this is the last one, Trev. We'll end with this one.
On Notre Dame's schedule, from Double Bogey Like a Champ, on Notre Dame's schedule this season, give me one team you think will overperform and one you think will underperform.
Is this based on what the expectations are for them now? Trev, I think I know who your overperform is. I'll give you first crack at that. See if I'm right.
Yeah, it's Rice. No, it's Wisconsin. Yeah,
wasn't expecting that one.
Boom. No, I think it's Wisconsin, and I understand, and rightfully so. A lot of people have written them off. Don't know if Luke Fickell's the guy, and I don't even know if the season's going to answer the question if Luke Fickell's the guy up in Madison. But no, I like their portal acquisitions. I know, I think FanDuel has their over under set somewhere on like 4.5, 5.5. I think they clear the over this year, strictly just because of what their schedule is. I think their schedule's not as hard as what it was the last 2 years. So I think they're a team that could become bowl eligible. And I know it's weird to say that when you're talking about a program like Wisconsin, but they haven't been the last 2 years. So yeah, I could see it being Wisconsin for the team that will overperform.
What is, Trev, if you could look real quick for me, what's the over-under prediction for Michigan State this season?
Yeah, for Michigan State, their over-under is 3.5.
Okay, I think I could see them being a team that surprises people this year a little bit and maybe gets to a bowl game. They're one that I've got my eye on. I think they have more talent than maybe their record showed last year. And some of it's gone. Some of it's back. They got some portal guys. I think Michigan State could be a 5-7 win team this year. I think they vastly underachieved last year. Like, he didn't inherit a 4-8 roster or a 3-9 roster. And I think Pat Fitzgerald's a good football coach. Thinking to who I think could underperform. I mean, the hard part here is there's not a lot of teams that people expect to perform. So, like, you only got like 4 options, and it's like Navy, Miami, BYU, and SMU. Like, which of those 4 do you think will underperform? Because we can say, well, I think Wisconsin's going to win 2 games this year, like, instead of 3. I think of the teams that I'd look at, the good teams, the 4 good teams, I could see BYU being one that takes a bigger step back this year than the other 4. I actually really like SMU. I think Miami's going to be pretty good. Again, I think that I'd probably say if I had to predict, and SMU, I think is going to be pretty good this year as well. If I had to predict one of the good teams to go backwards, I would predict that it is BYU. And I don't predict any of them, but if I had to predict one, that would be it for me. And just some guys they lost, and the Parker Kingston thing, and they won a lot of close games last year because they're well coached. Like, I could see them still being a good football team, Trev, but a couple of those close games, like the BYU game, a couple of those don't go their way in overtime this time. I could see something like that.
Sure. Again, I'm in the same boat as you in that. Like, I don't think any of the top level teams on Notre Dame's schedule will underperform. If I had to pick one, I'm going to go with SMU, solely because of what they're going to look like in the trenches. I have zero question about their skilled talent on offense or defense, but they're going to have a brand, like, from left to right, a whole new starting defensive line. All 4 of their starters from last year are gone. And if I think if I'm remembering correctly, the entire left side of their offensive line is gone. I think their right tackle and right guard come back. So those are some pretty, like, important positions. How they replace those is going to be huge. So if I had to pick a team, I'd probably go with SMU, because they're, like, right now on FanDuel, they're projected to, they have the second highest odds to win the division. They have the second highest over-under win total in the conference. Mind you, it's set at 8.5. So it's like, I don't want to say if they have 8 wins that they underperform based on that, but that's kind of how I look at it. So
we got a super chat from Black Irish saying, stay. So because you gave the super chat, we'll get to a couple more of the questions that just came through. We'll get one here from Archer, which I think is an interesting question. Trev, he says, if Notre Dame and BYU became a rivalry, which I know Trevor and I have both said we'd like to have, what would the name of the rivalry game be?
I mean, the fans would probably call it Catholics versus Mormons, but I don't know if the college football world would call it that.
And it's also kind of lame. It's not funny. It's literally descriptive of what you are. It's like the Indianas against the Utahs. It's like they are Mormon and you are Catholic. It's an institution. So I don't that wouldn't be overly creative. You know what I mean? Like, something more creative would be like the Catholics versus the heretics or something like that, where you're kind of taking a shot because you don't think Mormonism is this or that. I mean, you know what I mean? That would be more, and then they would call it the Mormons versus the heretics or something like, you know what I mean? Like something like that would be kind of funny, but like Holy War's already been used twice. And they have a game called the Holy War that is ironic that it's against a school that's not a Christian school or a religious school. It's a state school. I would call it, honestly, for me, it would be, I would just, something about Rocket and Tie. You know, like for me, it's like, we're going to pound you every year because we're never going to be over Rocket getting screwed out of the Heisman. I'd want to like think of something about the 1990 Heisman. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I can't pull up daily comments.
That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah, I'm not pulling that one up, buddy. I don't want to get demonetized, but that's actually kind of funny.
That's so good.
Somebody said Pop-Tarts Part Deux. Yeah. Oh, man, that's funny. Sister Wives versus Sisters of the Church. I don't think two football teams would have the word sisters in their names, in the name of their rivalry. So you can't go with that one. But, yeah, I'm not really good about that kind of stuff. To be honest with you, Trev. I would think of something to have to do with like, you know, but I don't know how you'd call it a rivalry, you know, the Rocket Trophy, you know, have a Heisman trophy, a fake Heisman trophy with Rocket's name on it that you're playing for every year. You know, the real Heisman Trophy winner. Buddy just said he was about to say Catholics versus sister wives. Again, that's more insulting to them. I don't think they would like want that part, you know, but like we call it Catholics versus convicts, but that's not what Miami calls Catholics versus convict. They don't call the rivalry that. So like if you want like a real name like Red River Shootout or the Holy War or something, you want something that's going to like be accepted by both teams. And I don't know that I can come up with something that's going to be accepted by both teams. That's, you know, and not every rivalry needs a name. You know, Notre Dame and Navy don't have a name. What would they name the game be? The Rocket Bowl? But they wouldn't like that. So I don't know. I'm not sure.
I don't know either.
Some of these are really funny. Oh, but they're not faking though. They truly believe what they say they believe. Whether I think it's correct or not, or good theology or not, they genuinely believe it. So there you go. Here's one from Brian J. Irish. We'll end with this one.
Some national media has Miami a top 3 team. Really? A new offensive line and defensive line and a young quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, look, Notre Dame went to the national championship game a year after losing their quarterback and losing 2 high draft picks and losing a starting center and, you know, lost Javonte Jean-Baptiste and lost a lot of players from their lost J.D. Bertrand, lost Maris Leofau, lost Cam Hart. I mean, that's college football. You lose players. They don't have a young quarterback, and he said that he forgot Mensa's there. But even the O-line, D-line, the O-line's got to get remade a little bit, Trev. That's a fair critique, but the D-line is not all that new. It's a bunch of guys that played are now stepping into the lineup. Marquise Lightfoot played a lot last year. Now he's going to be a starter. Justin Scott was a rotation guy last year. Now he's a starter. Ahmed Moten comes back. The only new guy is really Damon Wilson, and that's why you recruit. So, you know, like Notre Dame loses Riley Leonard, and okay, just CJ Carr ready to step into the lineup because you went and recruited well. Same thing with them in the offensive line. Hey, you lost this guy, Samson Okunlola, former 5-star recruit, time to step up and play. So I don't know that I'd say Miami's a top 3 team, but I'll probably have them 6th, 7th, or 8th, somewhere around there at the lowest. And so there versus 3 is not that big of a drop. I mean, they played in the championship last year, and their best player comes back, in my opinion, on offense. Their whole running back room comes back. Their receiving core should be a lot better than it was last year, in my opinion. Their whole secondary comes back. Their linebacker room comes back mostly intact. Like, yeah, you're focusing on the areas where they have new players. Well, that's true. I mean, that's a lot of people could say that. I mean, we could be sitting there talking like, dude, how's Notre Dame going to win next year? They just lost 2 first-round. How can they be a top 5 team? They just literally just set history. First time ever, the first 2 running backs in a draft are by the same school, both first-round picks. You're not going to run the ball next year with that. And you lost both your, 2 of your starting offensive line. Your 2 starting offensive line captains are gone. You moved everybody to a new position. Like, you're not going to be good this year. That's football. That's why you recruit. That's why you reload. So I think Miami's a legit top 10 team, and they're closer to 3 than they are to 10, most likely, in my opinion. Or at the very least, right there in the middle is where I would go.
We see that the same, man. There's spin that you can put on anything. And Brian, I'm not saying you're putting spin on it. It's just
I get it.
In the ranking that you probably looked at, you can spin anything. I mean, I had Notre Dame number 1 overall in my way too early top 25. And to Brian's point, they lost 2 offensive captains on the offensive line, 2 first-round NFL draft picks, 3 of their 4 leading pass catchers from last year. I mean, you can talk about anything, but I'm with you. Miami's closer to 3 than they are outside of the top 10.
And he asked again, is Miami a top 3 team? I don't have them as a top 3 team, but I also don't think it's absurd if somebody wants to have them there as a top 3 team. I mean, and the thing is, like, their run to the championship game last year was not a fluke. I mean, they had to beat Texas A&M on the road. They had to beat Ohio State, the defending national champions. They had to beat Ole Miss, the best team in the SEC, by that point in time because they were the last man standing. And then, like, that's a good run. They did not like luck. They didn't have like a Penn State run to the semifinals last year where they had to beat SMU and Boise State. They didn't have a Texas run to the semis where they got to beat the 12 seed who was ranked 16th and then the 4 seed who was ranked 12th. You know what I mean? Like, think about that. Texas beat the number 4 seed in the country last year in the playoffs 2 years ago, and that team was ranked 12th at the end. Like, you know what I mean? Like that they had to earn their way to the championship game last year. So no, I wouldn't have them that high, but I think that they're a borderline top 5 team. And so if somebody wants to put them 3, okay, cool, go for it. See how it plays out. I hope they are top 3 come November 7th because that'll be good for Notre Dame. Be great for Notre Dame. So yeah, we'll see. Now, Trev, we are officially done.
Folks, that'll do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Not to worry, though. More IB content coming your way at 5 p.m. here in about an hour. Guys are going live on IB Nation Sports Beat. They're also talking about the NFL Draft where Jay Love and J.D. Price went in the first round. And they're also talking some more blue gold game talk. So you're definitely not going to want to miss that. Tomorrow, you guys won't have to wait till Monday to see mine and Brian's happy, shining faces again. We will have a post-game show after the blue gold game tomorrow. Time that it starts is TBD because it'll just kind of depend on when I can get back to my dad's. Brian can get back home after the traffic from the blue gold game. So all the more reason to be subscribed to this channel and have that notification bell hit so you know whenever we are going live and when we're getting ready to go live. On your way out of the show, folks, hit that like. Whatever streaming platform you listen to our show on, we'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards@irishbreakdown.com. If you're traveling up to Notre Dame for the blue gold game, safe travels. Enjoy the weekend. Have a fun and safe time. And we'll see you guys back here tomorrow on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.